Chapter 1285. He was the first to trigger the heavenly punishment and was the first to enter an epiphany. Under the heavenly punishment, his physical body and soul were more stable than Qin Ritian's. Other than these factors, what made Qing Wanxiang think highly of Fatty Li Yuan was Fatty's personality. Fatty seemed to be high profile, but in reality he was not high profile at all. He was normal in all aspects, and his emotions were reflected on his face. Chen Ritian, on the other hand, had a cold and emotionless extreme Dao personality. This kind of personality could undoubtedly make a cultivator progress bravely. However, it was also because of this that Fatty with a normal personality had greater potential for development. After all, a non-extreme extreme Dao personality was already not inferior to Qin Ritian. If Fatty also had an extreme Dao personality, he would naturally be stronger. Dao Guang, Ling Feng, Xue Fian, and the Carnage Battle team felt the terrifying fluctuations of heaven and earth. They all broke out in cold sweat for Fatty, especially Ao Guang and the other two who had experienced the pressure of the heavenly punishment. They understood how terrifying the heavenly punishment that Fatty and Qin Ritian were enduring was. At this point, even if the three of them were hiding their strength, they had to admit that Fatty and Qin Ritian were strong. Everyone's eyes around the arena were filled with shock and horror as they looked at the two figures in the arena who were almost drowned by the lightning. Everyone felt that it was unbelievable. How could a cultivator at the golden celestial stage withstand such a powerful superimposed heavenly punishment? How strong did one's physical body and soul have to be to do that? Even most of the Grandmist Supremacy Realm disciples present felt that they could not withstand it, let alone Daoist Jingxian. However, Fatty and Qin Ritian both persevered. Even though their injuries were getting worse and their life aura was getting weaker and weaker, they did not dissipate. There were no signs of them being annihilated. What shocked everyone even more was that after the terrifying superimposed heavenly punishment, the two in the Epiphany were still able to crazily extract the power of lightning. As time passed, the superimposed heavenly punishment became stronger and stronger. The Dean and the others also became more and more nervous. Their attention was completely focused on the two of them, afraid that an accident would happen. However, what the Dean and the others did not expect was that Fatty and Qin Ritian actually persevered until the heavenly punishment ended. The moment the heavenly punishment ended, the fluctuations of heaven and earth disappeared, and the two's epiphany ended. Unlike the heavenly punishment that increased one's cultivation level, the heavenly punishment that defied the natural order did not reverse the effects of the heavenly punishment. Thus, the moment it ended, the pavilion masters of the true martial pavilion and the great grand pavilion acted at the same time. They directly unleashed powerful divine abilities that enveloped the two of them, helping them heal their wounds. Following that, the Dean announced his decision. Fatty Li Yuan and Qin Ritian were tied for the time being. Both of them would receive the title of prospective chief disciple. However, what the crowd didn't know was that the two people who seemed to be healing were actually communicating telepathically. I lost. Louder, I can't hear you. I lost. However, I will work hard. 10 years later, it is not certain who will win or lose. I like people like you who have a fighting spirit. Work hard. Perform as much as you can. The bigger the commotion, the better. I know what to do. Don't worry. Even if you don't control me with your origin, I won't do anything that will let myself down. What you want to do is also what I want to do. I just want to fight for a dominant position. If I can't do it now, I'll do it next time. Alright, you're always welcome. Cooperate with Ao Guang and the others in the immortal realm. Don't give yourself away. That's it, I'll cut off the connection. After saying that, Chen Hao cut off the telepathic connection with Qin Ritian. As the main body, he naturally had the supreme authority of the main body. However, since he had developed an independent mind, Chen Hao wanted to achieve true awe and not pressure him. Chen Hao didn't know the meaning of doing so, but he felt that it was the right thing to do. Big brother, I'm afraid that the two of them will be our formidable opponents in the future. The path of the immortal emperor shouldn't be a problem for them. Tang Hu said to Murong Qianhua as he watched Fatty Li and Qin Ritian being taken away by their respective pavilion masters. Let's wait until they grow into the Grandmist Supremacy realm. Murong Qianhua's expression turned serious. Fatty Li Yuan and Chen Ritian's performance today had exceeded his expectations by a lot. Even Ao Guang, Ling Feng, and Xue Fian, whom his master had asked him to get close to, had exceeded his expectations. This was not a good feeling. However, he could not do anything because just now, his master had secretly appeared and once again emphasized the importance of the heart of the strong, the belief of invincibility. Big brother, what do you mean? Tang, who was puzzled. Xian Yuanshan was also puzzled. Because before this, Murong Qianhua still had the idea of roping in Chen Ritian. I suddenly realized that we have lost our confidence and wavered. They are indeed very strong, but are they definitely stronger than us after advancing to the Grand Mist Supremacy realm? Not necessarily. But now we have taken them to heart and lost our composure. This shouldn't be. We can't lose the heart of the strong. The three of us brothers, our starlight, are not afraid of any challenges or competitors. With strong opponents, we should be excited and look forward to it because they are the stepping stones on our path to becoming the immortal emperor. Now, what we need to do is to become stronger. We need to become stronger wholeheartedly and face any challenge at any time. Big brother, you're right. Indeed. It's just a small Dahua academy. How can our vision be limited to this? Big brother, you're still the best. After this day, the challenges between the experts of the Great Transformation Pavilion and the True Martial Pavilion temporarily ceased. Chen Hao, Ao Guang, Ling Feng, Xue Fian, and Chen Ritian all went into seclusion to comprehend the heavenly punishment after this day and did not appear in the testing center's square again. Of course, no one would be so thick-skinned as to challenge them at this time. There was no need to doubt the strength of the five of them. After a month of challenges, Chen Hao and the other new students finally began their real life in the academy. Phew! A new day in a new month. The moment the first ray of sunlight jumped out of the horizon, Chen Hao, who was sitting cross-legged in the cultivation room, opened his eyes on time and woke up from his comprehension. After nearly a month, I've roughly digested it. Heavenly punishment, hee. The corners of Chen Hao's mouth curled up into a smile. Buzz. His body suddenly shook, and suddenly, an extremely fierce aura gushed out from Chen Hao's body. At least my strength has increased by 30%. Looks like my decision was very wise. Epiphany, connecting the eighth anima, epiphany, triggering the heavenly punishment, layering the heavenly punishment. In a short period of time, I've gained enlightenment and tempering, and truly eliminated the gap between me and the great world of Xiandi. The run-in period is complete. Phew. It's time for class today. I haven't felt it in a long time. The corners of Chen Hao's mouth curled up slightly. Unfortunately, there was no charm on his fat face. However, the excitement that could not be concealed was genuine. Chapter 1286. Phew. In the core area of the Grand Mist Supremacy Realm's Disciple Palace district in the True Martial Pavilion, Si Xian, who was sitting cross-legged in the cultivation room, let out a long sigh at almost the same time as Chen Hao and slowly opened their eyes. Class starts today. It's a whole month's time. Damn fatty. Si Xian frowned and cursed in a low voice. In a month's time, Chen Hao didn't enter the immortal realm space even once. Similarly, he didn't look for her either. This made her feel uneasy even when she was cultivating in seclusion in the immortal realm space. Of course, she could also take the initiative to look for Chen Hao. Similarly, because of the high level of her own palace, as long as Chen Hao agreed, she could also cultivate in Chen Hao's palace. However, as a woman, she had said that she would cultivate in seclusion until class time so that she could adapt to the vast thousand worlds of the immortal emperor as soon as possible. However, as a woman, she did not take the initiative to look for Chen Hao. To be precise, she did not take a step out of her palace. Therefore, she didn't know what was happening outside. Stepping out of the palace, Si Xian looked at the mountains in the distance and muttered to herself, "Damn fatty, if you don't look for me today, I'll teach you a lesson." "Humph, I won't look for you." After saying that, Si Xian leaped into the air and was about to fly to the basic unique technique hall. She didn't realize how sensitive and coquettish she was in love. However, Just as Xian moved, she suddenly screamed in surprise. Hee hee. Without any warning, the fatty appeared out of thin air and held Xian's slender waist as he laughed lewdly. Damn fatty. Xian's face instantly turned red as she punched the fatty. After a month. Oh no, it should be 100 months, which is more than 8 years. It seems like our relationship has been fermenting well. Chen Hao said shamelessly. What nonsense are you talking about? What relationship do I have with you? It's useless to be stubborn. Let's go, my dear. It's time for class. Let's talk as we walk. When the two arrived at the entrance of the basic dojo, Chen Hao and Xian exchanged information about the past month. When Xian learned the reason why Chen Hao didn't enter the immortal world, she was naturally surprised. However, to Chen Hao's slight disappointment, there was no further news from Yilan. It seemed that it would not be easy to find the secret space where the spirit helmet was born. This also meant that the day of meeting the girls had not been decided yet. Junior brother Li Yuan. Sister Chen Si. Just as Chen Hao and Xian were about to part ways and head to their respective dojos, a gust of fragrant wind blew over. The president of the Painter Association, Jiang Xiaoyu, and several other ladies came before Chen Hao and Xian. President Jiang? Don't tell me you have classes too. Chen Hao greeted him with a smile. Senior sister, I've specially come to inform you that our Painting and Calligraphy Association's exchange meeting will be held on the evening of the 15th of this month. Don't forget to attend. Also, give me the contact number of the immortal world so that we can contact each other in the future. Jiang Xiaoyu said. All right, Chen Hao replied and immediately told Jiang Xiaoyu his contact number through telepathy. Sister Chen Si, give me yours too, Jiang Xiaoyu said with a smile. Xian had also joined the Painting and Calligraphy Association. She was much older than Jiang Xiaoyu and was at the same level. Therefore, although Xian was a newcomer, Jiang Xiaoyu was too embarrassed to call her junior sister. However, it was also inappropriate to call her senior sister. She could only affectionately call her elder sister. All right, Xian smiled and also told Jiang Xiaoyu her contact number through telepathy. Hello Teacher Li, I'm Wan Yu. Please give me your guidance in the future. Teacher Li, I'm Fong Yun. I really like your painting and calligraphy. I hope to have the chance to receive your guidance. Teacher Li. Just as Jiang Xiaoyu finished speaking, the ladies around her surrounded Fatty enthusiastically and introduced themselves. Their gazes towards Fatty were filled with admiration and adoration. They did not care about Xian, who was beside Fatty at all. Cough cough. Fatty coughed awkwardly and said, Everyone can just call me Fatty. I don't dare to give you guidance. If there's a chance, I'll go to the association frequently to interact with everyone. President Jiang, we still have to rush for class. We'll take our leave first. Go on. Jiang Xiaoyu laughed coquettishly and said to Chen Hao. Then she looked at the ladies and said, You girls, look at how you scared Teacher Li. Can't you be more reserved? Even Sister Chen Si is here. What's the origin of Dao? Dao can be explained, but it's not the same Dao. No one can say for sure what the origin of Dao is. Every cultivator's understanding of Dao is different. Thousands of people have thousands of solutions, thousands of people have thousands of Dao. To every cultivator, the origin of Dao is different. Dao follows nature, but it is ever-changing. Only by comprehending one's own Dao among the thousands of Dao laws can one trace back to the origin of one's own Dao. It's easy to raise one's cultivation level, but it's difficult to comprehend one's own Dao. It's even more difficult to truly comprehend and control one's own origin of Dao. Even Old Man only touched a little of the origin. The process of cultivation is the process of constantly approaching the origin of Dao. If one day you can control the origin of Dao, then congratulations, you'll definitely become a powerful immortal emperor. Today, Old Man will use the most basic Dao laws of the 5 elements to explain the Old Man's feelings in the process of comprehending Dao for all of you to use as a reference. However, let me remind all of you that Dao is your own. Don't let Old Man's comprehension shackle you. Otherwise, the gains will not make up for the losses. In a dojo, Fatty sat cross-legged alone with a smile on his face as he listened to the old Dao voice that resounded throughout the dojo. Origin of Dao. This was a compulsory course for any academy. At the same time, it was also the most popular class. Not to mention new students like Chen Hao, even the seniors, who had passed their tenure term had signed up to attend. They would only stop when all the teachers who taught Origin of Dao were finished. Thousands of people had thousands of solutions, tens of thousands of people had tens of thousands of Daos. Every teacher's Dao was a different form of inspiration for cultivators. So powerful. He only touched a little of the origin of Dao, and he's already at the true immortal king realm. The aura of a true immortal king, the profound Dao voice, the superposition of the laws of space and time, the supply of heaven and earth spirit chi, the strengthening of the laws of heaven and earth. With such good conditions, I'm afraid ancient chaos will only be able to achieve it after a very long time. There's really no comparison. I can't waste such an opportunity. Fatty, who was sitting cross-legged, sighed in his heart as he sensed the aura of the dojo. The laws of space and time were casually condensed in the dojo, and the teacher was an old true immortal king who had retired to the second line. There was also an extremely rich supply of heaven and earth spirit chi and the strengthened laws of heaven and earth spirit chi. For a country bumpkin, like Chen Hao who had not seen the world, he could not help but be shocked. Originally, I thought that there was not much meaning in attending classes for 10 years. Now, it seems that 10 years is far from enough. No wonder the old students have to use contribution points to exchange for lessons. These 10 years cannot be wasted. Chapter 1287. Although it wasn't as fun as he had imagined, this was what Chen Hao needed the most right now. Chen Hao calmed his mind and quickly integrated into the old man's Dao sound. Ao Guang, Ling Feng, Shui Fian, and the others who were not far away from Chen Hao were familiar with this method of teaching, but none of them would waste time at this time. In the Great Qian planet, in the core main city of Great Qian City, there was a vast and majestic palace that was shrouded in light screens. Anyone who could step through the entrance of this palace was either a super expert of seventh heaven or a top genius of the great world of Xiandi. Any random one of them would become a top genius of the great world of Xiandi. This was because this palace was the Red Cloud Academy, ranked 32nd among the top 100 academies of the great world of Xiandi. Oh my! Little White is so powerful. He's ranked 10th, a top academy, one of the top 10 experts of the Daoist Golden Wonderland. I love it. In the Red Cloud Academy, outside the testing center square, Chen Hao's fifth life, the Tree of Life, and the freaks Zhou Qinglong, Yin Xian, and the others slowly descended. When they saw Chen Shusheng's name on the ranking list, Zhou Qinglong and the others widened their eyes in shock. Get lost. Hee hee, I couldn't help myself. Why are you so fierce? Little White, don't forget that I'm now in the Grand Mist Supremacy realm. Besides, don't think I can't tell that you have the same interests as me. Damn. Can you stop talking nonsense? You damn sissy, how can I be the same as you? Since you've recognized me as your boss, how dare you compare realms with me? Wait until I step into the Hongmeng Supremacy realm, I'll crush you. Fifth Life said. When he first met the 10 people, Yin Xian and the others expressed that they wanted to follow him, whether it was in the real world or in the celestial realm. Brother Chen, didn't you just enter the great world of Xiandi? 10th place. That's the 10th place already? Yin Xian couldn't help but ask. Although after this meeting, Chen Hao had become quite like Zhou Qinglong, this perverted pervert, which made them a little uncomfortable for a while, Chen Hao's kindness was not forgotten. Fortunately, Chen Hao was not as ruthless as Zhou Qinglong. Of course, Yin Xian and the others also knew that this was due to Chen Hao refining the seed of the Tree of Life and truly fusing with it. It had to be said that being able to do this was also a very shocking thing. Yeah, this is a top-notch academy, and it's ranked 32nd. Xiang Tiange said. It's just a test result. What's there to be surprised about? It's just so. I'm going to be first. Fifth Life curled his lips, resisting the urge to stretch out his orchid fingers as he spoke in a slightly feminine manner. There was no other way. Although he now had his own independent consciousness and had the desire to compete with his main body for supremacy, he still had to abide by his main body's absolute control. Men and women could not get close to each other. This was the first condition he had to abide by. At this time, he was representing his main body, so he naturally couldn't appear too feminine. Therefore, he could only restrain himself. Brother Qin, thank you for this time. If it weren't for your recommendation, the 10 of us would have to wait 10 years. A few days ago, after Chen Hao's fifth life had sensed Zhou Qinglong's aura, he'd met up with them. Of course, fifth life had met up with them as Chen Hao. He hadn't told Zhou Qinglong and the others that he was Chen Hao's fifth life. There was no need for that. After meeting up, fifth life found out that the 10 of them had just stepped into the great world of Xiandi, so he directly recommended them to Red Cloud Academy. Zhou Qinglong and the others relied on their valiant talent and comprehension of the 3 great immortal sutras to obtain special permission to take the test. After all, this round of recruitment had just ended, and with the recommendation of a monstrous genius like Chen Hao's fifth life, it was only natural that special treatment would be given. The 10 of them didn't disappoint fifth life. At this moment, all of them had passed the test and become members of Red Cloud Academy. Although they weren't in the top ranks, they were still very outstanding, especially Zhou Qinglong and Yin Xian. Little Xian, you don't have to thank us. We're family. Alright, let's go back. I've already given you my contact number in the Immortal realm. When the time comes, we can contact each other directly through the Immortal realm. Brother Qin, wait. Is there anything else? Brother Qin, you really don't plan to return to the chaotic boundless world? We can bring you back through the Hongmeng region. It won't take long. I've already said that if fate wills it, we'll meet again. Just like you, fifth life said with a slight frown. But Nguyen Tan Lan is really pitiful. You can't imagine how important you are in her heart. She broke through the controller's seal several times in the Daoist Golden Wonderland. Now that she's broken through in the Hongmeng region, she's been trapped by love and has fallen into a demonic trap. That's right. Brother Qin, you're the source of the love demon. Only you can help her. Moreover, you haven't stepped into the Grand Mist Supremacy realm yet, so you can step into the Hongmeng region. When the time comes, just let the controller arrange for an expert who's about to break through to the Hongmeng Supremacy realm to bring you out. It won't affect you much. It'll just take a bit of time. Xiang Tiange, Xiana, and the others immediately tried to persuade Fifth Life. When they'd first met, they told Fifth Life about Nguyen Tan Lan's situation. Unfortunately, Fifth Life didn't react. He didn't seem to have any intention of going back to rescue Nguyen Tan Lan. It couldn't be helped. He was only the fifth life of the Tree of Life. If he knew that the person was Chen Hao's third life, the situation might be different. He'd probably set off immediately. All right, don't mention this again in the future. I won't change what I've said. That's all. But don't worry too much. She'll be fine. With that, Fifth Life took the lead and left. Yin Xian and the others could only shake their heads. The word love couldn't be forced. If the main body knew, I probably wouldn't have delayed for 100 or 1,000 years. If the third life knew, he'd definitely go. He's really quite pitiful. His love runs deep. I don't know where the third life is, but he should be on a nearby main planet. I hope I can meet him as soon as possible. If he won't go anyway, I want to become stronger than the main body. How can I delay? Fifth Life muttered to himself as he returned to his palace. The top 10 palaces. Red Cloud Academy wasn't divided into 10 pavilions like Dahua Academy. Instead, it was a whole. Therefore, the top 10 palaces were the true top 10 palaces. Fatty Li Yuan's top 10 palaces couldn't compare to them at all. To put it bluntly, Fatty Li Yuan's top 10 palaces were merely the top 10 palaces of the true martial pavilion. Moreover, it was an academy that was one level lower than Red Cloud Academy. Add 1, still 09. Chapter 1288. As for Di Wu Ming, he had relied on the Tree of Life's innate magical powers to gain the favor of the higher-ups in the Red Cloud Academy and become a core training target. Under such a cultivation environment, it was difficult for Di Wu Ming to not make progress. Although Chen Hao had obtained basic information about Di Wu Ming in the immortal realm, he had not connected his mind. Therefore, he did not know the specific experience of Di Wu Ming. It was the same for the other lives. However, when Chen Hao had finished teaching the origin of Dao and entered the immortal realm, he had immediately discovered the arrival of the 9 great geniuses of the chaotic vast thousand world and Xian Na's group of 10 through the communication between the great fates. This made Chen Hao slightly surprised and pleasantly surprised. At the same time, he could not help but think of Nguyen Tan Lan. Dao was heartless, and he thought he could not care less. Unfortunately, Chen Hao could not completely let go. The one who had truly fallen in love with Nguyen Tan Lan was the third life in the demonic realm. However, the one who had truly obtained Nguyen Tan Lan was the original Chen Hao, who had awakened and saved Nguyen Tan Lan. Even though Chen Hao knew that Nguyen Tan Lan had contacted him from the beginning out of interest, he could no longer ignore her like he had done in his previous life on Earth. Unfortunately, Di Wu Ming's communication with Zhou Qinglong and the others did not mention Nguyen Tan Lan again. Chen Hao only felt a ripple in his heart and then calmed down. He did not think much about it. Interest had brought them together. When they parted, Chen Hao did not discover her true feelings. From the beginning to the end, he thought that she was a girl who could give up everything for cultivation. Even so, before Chen Hao left, he had made the greatest compensation to her. He had done his best, and fate had ended. If she did not care, why should he care? The origin of Tao, 10 essentials of Taoism, and an overview of the 3,000 great ways. These 3 days of classes at the beginning of the month made Chen Hao feel intoxicated and unsatisfied. Originally, he thought that since he had the general outline of the Great Ways and the mental cultivation method of the 3,000 Great Ways, the main value of such classes for him should be in the Taoist field, Taoist sound, and other cultivation comprehension. However, what he did not expect was that every teacher who taught the Taoist field condensed by Taoist sound brought Chen Hao a brand new comprehension, and he felt quite enlightened. This was not something that Ling Feng, Ao Guang, Xue Fian, and the others could understand. A teacher's job was to teach and enlighten. Ever since Chen Hao stepped into the world of cultivation, other than Old Man Zhao's personal disciple at the beginning of the Xiao family and the occasional pointers from Old Man Xiao, he had basically groped his way forward. The number of times that Chen Hao had personally imparted the Dao and used the Dao voice and Dao field to impart the Dao could be counted on one's fingers. Perhaps it was precisely because of this that Chen Hao's feelings and gains from these 3 days of classes were more profound than anyone else's. "Brother Fatty, it's over. Why are you still standing there? Let's go." Ao Guang came in front of Chen Hao, who was still sitting cross-legged, and called out to him. 3,000 great Dao, I wish I could continue." Chen Hao muttered. "It's just an overview. It'll be awesome if you can get the most important general outline of the great Dao." Ling Feng appeared out of thin air and waved his folding fan lightly. He looked at Chen Hao and continued, "Fatty, you have the 5 elements great art and the teleportation art, 2 of the 3,000 great Dao's unique skills. Moreover, you have cultivated them to an extremely high level. I think you must have obtained the complete Heart Sutra or even the inheritance, right?" "That's right. Let's go. We'll talk as we walk." Chen Hao said hurriedly when he saw many cultivators gathering around him enthusiastically. At the same time, he took the lead and walked toward the exit of the Dao field. "In other words, Fatty, you might probably have more than 3 types of great Dao unique skills that you have completely comprehended, right?" When everyone was flying towards the palace, Ling Feng only communicated with him, Chen Hao, Ao Guang, and Xue Fian through telepathy. "If you have something to say, just say it. Why do you need to beat around the bush with me?" Chen Hao glared at Ling Feng. "I heard the old man, my master, say that the 3,000 great Dao are the most typical unique skills of the 3,000 great Dao's unique skills in the immortal world. It's very difficult to cultivate each of them to the extreme. After all, they are not one's own Dao and can only be cultivated as a divine skill unique skill. Of course, a Dao that suits one is the true Dao. The origin of Dao can only be touched by one's own unique skills." Ao Guang interrupted. "However, Brother Fatty's talent and comprehension are outstanding. It's normal for him to cultivate 2 types of great Tao to the extreme, right? Monkey, didn't you hear me say that Fatty might have cultivated 3 types of great Tao to the extreme? Didn't you hear that Fatty didn't refute me? 3 types. It's nothing, right? Who asked Brother Fatty's talent and comprehension to be so strong? Even the Daoist Golden Wonderland could have an epiphany and trigger the heaven-defying punishment. This is rare in the entire the great world of Xiandi. I dare not say that I can count them with my fingers, but there are definitely not many people who can do this. What do you know? Old man, my master said that no matter how strong one's talent is, no one can cultivate more than 3 types of great Tao at the same time unless they obtain the legendary general outline of the great Tao. I heard this from my master too. It's true. However, it's not easy to obtain it. It has to be passed down. Otherwise, even if the words of the general outline of the great Tao are right in front of us, we can only understand a little at best. The cold and silent Xue Fian suddenly took over Ling Feng's words and looked at Chen Hao. After a slight pause, she looked straight into Chen Hao's eyes and said, Fatty, you really cultivate 3 types of great Tao? That means you really obtain the inheritance of the general outline of the great Tao? Fatty frowned slightly. Even he did not expect the general outline of the great Tao to be related to the general outline of the great Tao. Others might not know, but Ling Feng was sure that Chen Hao had at least 3 types of great Tao. Moreover, he had cultivated all of them to the extreme. How could Ling Feng not know the ultimate form of the Great Change technique? However, Ling Feng only thought of this when the general outline of the 3,000 great Tao appeared today. That's right. Because of this, there's something that makes me even more confused. The inheritance of the general outline of the great Tao can only be obtained by reaching the last checkpoint on the path to becoming a celestial emperor, the emperor's celestial stairway. Moreover, after obtaining it, it can't be passed down to others. This means that Fatty, you couldn't have obtained the inheritance from others. You could only have obtained it yourself on the emperor's celestial stairway. However, you're only the Daoist Golden Wonderland now. Fuck. Brother Fatty, you should be an indestructible reincarnation body? The reincarnation of a celestial emperor? Ao Guang's eyes widened. He had to admit that Ling Feng and Xue Fian's speculation shocked him. At the same time, he understood why Fatty was so heaven-defying. At the same time, Ao Guang vaguely felt that he had found the reason why he was so willing to submit to Fatty at first sight. Little did he know that Ao Guang's speculation was wrong. Chapter 1289. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, why don't I know anything about this? The fat man looked at Ao Guang in surprise, then looked at Ling Feng and Xue Fian. Fatty, don't worry. It doesn't matter if you admit it or not. We'll keep it a secret. Even if you're not the reincarnation of a celestial emperor, you must be a top expert who has entered the endless cycle of reincarnation. Otherwise, how could you be so much stronger than me? Ling Feng said as he fanned himself. How can you be so sure? Chen Hao asked. Of course. Without the primary outline of the Grand Tao, even a true celestial king wouldn't be able to cultivate all 3 Grand Tao techniques to the highest level, let alone a Daoist Jinxian. It's impossible. Legend has it that the primary outline of the Grand Tao was created by the strongest person in the celestial world after comprehending thousands of Grand Taos for hundreds of millions of years. The profundities contained in the primary outline of the Grand Tao can't be summed up by the most typical 3,000 Grand Taos. It's known as the origin of all Taos in the celestial world. Based on this, you can see how powerful the primary outline of the Grand Tao is. Only those who have inherited the primary outline of the Grand Tao can merge the profundities of different Grand Taos into one. Otherwise, cultivating 2 Grand Taos is the limit. If you cultivate more, you'll suffer from qi deviation and your cultivation base will be destroyed. In the worst case, your body and soul will be destroyed. Ling Feng said. Is it really that powerful? Of course. Ling Feng said confidently. I've heard about this from my master as well. Unfortunately, there are very few top experts who have obtained the primary outline of the Grand Tao on the Emperor's celestial stairway. Xue Fian added. She seemed to be interested in this topic as well. Fian, it seems like your master is not simple? Ling Feng said as he looked at Xue Fian. Same here, Xue Fian said expressionlessly. Both of them knew in their hearts that the person who knew about the legend of the primary principle of the Great Path must have once stepped onto the Emperor's celestial stairway. Moreover, he must have reached the 2999th step and was only one step away from becoming an emperor. The 8 emperors from millions of years ago, the few top celestial kings in the world of Xian, and translation of words, Xue Fian translation, Fian, and the 8 emperors from the world of the Grand Tao. And the great celestial words, the 8 emperors from the great world, and the celestial kings, and translation are Fian, words translation, and translation Lin, translation, and Fian translation, Fian translations, Ling translation. However, neither of them said who their master was, nor did they ask for the other's opinion. The fact that they were able to say this at this time already showed that they had enough trust in everyone. Sigh, I also want to be like what you guys said. Not to mention the reincarnation of an immortal emperor, even the endless cycle of reincarnation would be good. But damn it, I haven't awakened any memories since I was young. I haven't awakened any divine abilities, supreme techniques, or comprehension of cultivation. However, I won't hide it from you guys. I do have the complete primary outline of the Great Tao, but I don't know if it's an inheritance. When I first obtained it, I couldn't understand it at all. I knew every word, but I had no idea what they meant when they were put together. It was only when I advanced to the true celestial stage of the great all-embracing heaven that I began to understand it. Moreover, Chen Hao said half-truthfully. There was no need for him to hide too much from Ling Feng, Xue Fian, and Ao Guang. There was no need for him to hide the secret of the general outline of the Great Way. In his opinion, it was not a big deal even if he told the world about the general outline of the Great Way. It was not something that anyone could comprehend and cultivate. Just like Chen Hao, his sisters, and his brothers and sisters, who had not heard about the primary outline of the Grand Tao when Chen Hao was reciting the Sanskrit Grand Tao. However, how much he could learn, or even whether he could memorize it all in his mind, was a problem. Moreover, what? Ling Feng, Xue Fian, and Ao Guang all looked at Chen Hao. Ao Guang was looking forward to it, but Ling Feng and Xue Fian were extremely shocked. This made Chen Hao a little puzzled. Was there a need to be so surprised? What are you talking about? At this moment, Si Xian, who had just come out of another training hall, caught up with them and went directly to Chen Hao's side. After sensing the aura of the voice transmission barrier between the 4 of them, Si Xian asked curiously. It's about the primary outline of the Grand Tao. Cici, why are you here? Chen Hao asked. In these 3 days, Chen Hao had only met up with Ao Guang, Ling Feng, and the others occasionally. After they finished their classes, they returned to their own palaces. There was no need for him to be entangled with Si Xian like glue. Can't I go to your palace to have a look? Of course. It's just that my palace is far inferior to yours. If you don't mind, feel free to come. Sister-in-law, go back and chat. Fatty bro, what's the matter? Ao Guang interrupted rudely. This was the first time he had heard of the outline of the Tao, so he was more curious than Ling Feng and Xue Fian. Fatty, continue. Ling Feng and Xue Fian urged almost at the same time. As they spoke, they looked at each other and could see the shock and horror in each other's eyes. Chi. Chen Hao smiled slightly and did not answer Ao Guang's question. Instead, 3 dazzling milky white light of memory appeared from his glabella and floated in front of the 3 of them. This is the entire content of the outline of the Tao. Perhaps you can remember what I've comprehended. As for what I haven't comprehended, you should forget it after looking at it. Is this considered an inheritance? Fatty bro, no, boss, idol, you're so generous. When Ao Guang heard Chen Hao's words, he directly absorbed the light of memory in front of him into his glabella. I'll go back first to digest it. Ao Guang turned into a stream of light and disappeared first. Fed it. Are you sure? Sure this is the complete outline of the Tao? Are you telling the truth? Ling Feng and Xuefian looked at the light of memory in front of them in shock and asked in disbelief. Nonsense, how could I, fat bro, lie? Keep it, you're welcome. Do the two of you have to be so shocked? When the two of them heard Chenhao's words, they immediately sent out two streams of gentle energy. After surrounding Chenhao's light of memory, they carefully absorbed it into their minds, as if they were putting away the most precious treasure in the world. They were afraid that they would accidentally damage it. Fatty, if what you said is true, from now on, you're my boss. Do you know that no one in the world has the complete outline of the Tao? Even if one obtained the inheritance on the Emperor's celestial stairway, he could only comprehend as much as he could at that time. If he couldn't comprehend it, he wouldn't be able to remember it. But you actually have the complete outline of the Tao in your mind when you haven't comprehended it. And even if you obtain the inheritance, even if you've comprehended it and imparted it to us through the light of memory, we still have to comprehend a little before it disappears to form memories. At most, it's just the tip of the iceberg. It's even different from the real outline of the Tao. Now, do you know why the two of us are so shocked? Ling Feng looked at Fatty as if he was looking at a monster and said, I'll go back and verify it now. No matter if it's true or not, thank you very much. Fatty, thank you. Ling Feng and Xuefian sped up at the same time and rushed back to their palaces. Supplement. Still 08. Chapter 1290. Comprehended by the most powerful master of the immortal world. Seeing Ling Feng and Xuefian leaving, the harmless smile on Chenhao's face disappeared. It was impossible for him not to be shocked. After all, this was the first time he had heard about the primary outline of the Great Tao. Even Yi Lan, who was once very powerful, had never mentioned it. To be precise, Yi Lan had not reached the end of his path to becoming an immortal emperor. He had left the great world of Xiandi because of the Galaxy King, so he did not know about it. Although the old god had followed Chenhao for many years and was very familiar with the primary outline of the Great Tao, he had never mentioned the origin of the primary outline of the Great Tao. I just unearthed an ancient book on Earth. I didn't expect the primary outline of the Great Tao to have such a great origin. According to Ling Feng and Xuefian, if one has not comprehended the primary outline of the Great Tao, they should not be able to remember the whole text. Although I did not understand it at first, I can remember it. Could it be that what I have is not the real primary outline of the Great Tao? Or is it because I am special? Chenhao and Si Xian looked at each other, but he was thinking to himself. Si Xian did not ask any more questions. She just followed Chenhao into his palace unhurriedly. As one of the top 10 palaces in the Grand Mist Supremacy realm, Si Xian could enter Chenhao's low-level palace unconditionally. You still haven't figured it out? Si Xian asked when they stepped into the cultivation room. I can't figure it out. Forget it. Anyway, I must be very powerful. Yes, I must have a great background. However, I am me. The current me will always be me. No one can change that. Chenhao said proudly. He looked at Si Xian and paused for a moment. Then he continued, Why? You can't bear the loneliness of cultivating alone so soon? What nonsense! Then why have you come to such a shabby place? A faint smile appeared on the corners of Chenhao's mouth. His gaze moved around Si Xian's body, and his expression was rather toothless. You don't want me to come? Why would I? I just don't want you to delay your cultivation progress because of me. That's more like it. Fatty, I've realized that the cultivation environment isn't the most important thing for me. I've been stuck at the primordial chaos realm for too many years. What I need the most is my mental state and comprehension of the heavenly Tao laws. My physical body, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and so on. I can barely change them. That's true. Furthermore, I've discovered that when I train with you, I'm subconsciously influenced by your aura. My comprehension speed and state of mind become better. Oh? It seems that your vital yin has reached the point where you urgently need Big Brother to soothe it. We are not dual cultivating, we are just cultivating together. You have this kind of feeling just from the fusion of our auras. If we can truly fuse our yin and yang, the effect will definitely be 100 times better. Cece hee, do you want to give it a try? Damn fatty, give it a try my ass. Si Xian pushed the shameless fatty away and said with a blush on her pretty face. She had to admit that Qinhao was right. People were afraid of falling in love. If there were no worries and emotional fetters, Si Xian would not be in this situation. However, after falling in love, Si Xian, who had lived for hundreds of millions of years and still maintained her vital yin body, would have 100 times or even 1,000 times stronger impact on her state of mind than a young woman. It would break the delicate balance of her yin and yang. This was something that she could not control at all. All right, big brother, I'll do dual cultivating with you. No way? Si Xian's face immediately turned red. This time, Qinhao directly stuck to Si Xian and kissed her seductive lips in a domineering manner. At the same time, he clasped his hands and entwined them together in a strange position. My dear, just like this, the vital yin body will not be affected by the small circulation of the physical body. When the time comes, you and Xiaofeng will also not be affected. Alright, if you want to cultivate your willpower, just bear with it. When you can't bear it, just enter the immortal world space. Big brother will enter first. Buzz. After Qinhao finished speaking, the space between his eyebrows shook and his mind completely disappeared from his physical body. At the same time, his true essence naturally formed a small circulation with Si Xian's true essence in their bodies. Si Xian, whose face was red, could not be as calm and free as Qinhao at this time. Her heart was so nervous that it was about to jump out of her throat. Just as Qinhao said, this was indeed the time to train her willpower. But there was no doubt that this kind of dual cultivating was of great benefit to her now, especially in helping her restore the delicate balance of her yin and yang. It was very useful. Even if she entered the immortal world space, her physical body would unconsciously circulate and improve her. It could be said that neither side was delayed. Buzz. Fuck, directly appear again? The moment Qinhao appeared in the immortal world space, he looked at the void in a bad mood. Ever since the last time he tried to ask about young Liuyan's parents and Master Han Mei's situation, Qinhao wanted to enter the immortal world space again and meet the humanized Yang Luoyan. But what made him depressed was that he always appeared directly on Earth. At this time, a message notification sounded in Qinhao's mind. Second Life? Finally appeared. Zhulu Academy is indeed the Immortal Emperor's #1 academy. Damn it, each one is more awesome than the other. They don't know how to keep a low profile at all. After secretly checking Second Life's basic information, Qinhao was right. The proud and arrogant Second Life had indeed chosen the #1 academy, Zhulu Academy. When Qinhao began to check Second Life's information, his eyes widened in surprise. This sovereign is very strange. Why would I send a message to myself? Don't be surprised, I know, I'm sending it to you. Sorry, although your 9 lives mystic technique is very strong and has reached a very high level, when I was in the ranking competition, I was discovered by the honorary dean of the #1 academy. He admires me very much. That's right, it's me, not your sovereign. He discovered the 9 lives mystic technique and knew that I'm not the sovereign. But he told me that as long as I'm strong enough, I can break the sovereign's absolute control of the origin. If you're not so ignorant, you should know who this honorary dean is. Legend has it that the strongest person in the great world of Xiandi, the Star River King. Do you know him? I became his disciple. Last but not least, I, Qin Tianhe, will definitely become the absolute leader in the future, or the true independent me. Fuck! The content of the message made Qinhao clench his fist and curse directly. At the same time, he frowned in confusion. The Star River King. The Second Life, which was formed by the accumulation of billions of beliefs in the ancient chaos era, was actually seen through by the Star River King. Connect. 1. Qinhao didn't hesitate for too long. He directly connected his communication with Second Life to both sides. Motherfucker, I'm rebelling. Chapter 1291. Sure enough. You finally appeared. In the space of the immortal world, on a towering mountain peak, tens of thousands of rays of golden light soaked the void for tens of thousands of miles. Everything was immersed in the golden light filled with a divine aura. At the core of the light, a handsome figure sat cross-legged. He suddenly opened his eyes and spoke indifferently. His pitch-black eyes seemed to contain endless stars, shining with golden light. It was breathtaking. A hint of surprise flashed across Xiangshan Ruoshui's calm and composed expression the moment he opened his eyes. Immediately he regained his composure. The corners of his mouth inadvertently curled up. If any young girl saw him, her heart would skip a beat. It was a face with sharp edges and could be called perfect. His eyes were deep, and his temperament was transcendent. Bathed in the golden light, he was even more charming. Who else could it be but Qin Hao? However, this was Qin Hao's second life. His alias was Chen Tianhe, and his second life was condensed with billions of faith. Chen Tianhe's surname was naturally Chen. Tianhe naturally came from the birthplace of the second life, the Tianhe star field of the nirvana space. You're actually using my true appearance? Chen Hao's expression changed the moment the two-way communication went through, and he said sternly, I, Chen Tianhe, can't do something like hiding the head and showing the tail. You're very immersive. Chen Tianhe, damn it, you've broken free from my restriction? You flatter me. I still can't get rid of it, but temporarily suppressing it for a while isn't difficult for me. Of course, I have to thank the ancient chaos universe for providing me with the power of faith, which is growing at an astonishing speed at all times. Is that so? Of course. Chen Hao, you seem to be very unhappy. You're so confident, you shouldn't be regretting giving me all the power of faith, right? Do you know who the Star River King is? Chen Hao calmed the rising anger in his heart and asked coldly. Of course I do. The Star River King can be said to be the #1 person in the great world of Xiandi. I dare not say that he controls the great world of Xiandi, but he's not far off. I think he even has very high authority in the immortal world space. I know about ancient chaos, you don't have to tell me. As soon as Chen Hao said the words ancient chaos, Second Life stopped him. Idiot, this father will tell you clearly, who cares about the Celestial River King? He couldn't interfere with the space of the celestial world. You won't be able to monitor our communication. Second Fate was taken aback for a moment before he replied, How did you know? You have never seen a Celestial River King before. You can't even begin to imagine how powerful he is. Cut the crap. Once I've decided on something, I'll never be wrong. You actually acknowledged him as your master. Has your fucking head been kicked by a donkey? It's none of your business. I have my own plans and thoughts. It won't take long for me to break free from your shackles. But don't worry, you are me and I am you. You won't give up on me and I won't give up on you. What I want is to surpass you and defeat you completely. I want to become the true leader and take back my women, little Hui and little Qian. My fate is in my control. You'd better not think about trying to rob me of my ability now. The Celestial River King has seen through me, and I chose to acknowledge him as my master. It's not without benefits. Of course, don't worry, I won't do anything to betray you, the other lives, or ancient chaos and the others. All I want to do is become stronger. The road to becoming an immortal emperor is where you and I will have our final showdown. Fuck, do you know that you're asking a tiger for its skin? Nothing ventured, nothing gained. I won't die. If there's nothing important, please don't check my messages. That's all. Don't waste your time on me. You should know that I have plenty of time. Even if I don't cultivate, my cultivation base will automatically increase with the accumulation of the power of faith. Buzz. As Second Fate spoke, Chen Hao's mind shook, and their two-way communication was cut off. Clearly, Second Fate had really closed the connection. That was the only reason why Chen Hao's original body couldn't communicate with him. Of course, Second Fate had also lost the ability to communicate with anyone unless he reactivated the communication function. Phew. Calm down, heart demon. Obsession. He is me and I am him. Subduing him is the same as subduing my heart. There won't be any problems with my basic bottom line. What's there to be afraid of? Chen Hao thought to himself, unable to calm down for a long time. Although he knew that all of this originated from his original body's heart, knowing was one thing. When he actually encountered it, it wasn't easy to accept. Furthermore, Chen Hao felt immense pressure. After all, this was just the beginning. Second fate was like this, and eighth fate was like this. How could the other fates not be like this? If I can't even defeat myself, how can I talk about the peak? From today onwards, except for those in the eighth fate, Chen Hao, won't pay attention to any of them. On the road to becoming an immortal emperor, watch how I subdue each and every one of you. Boom. Chen Hao punched out, and endless Dao laws and energy annihilated mountain after mountain. Cultivate. Only cultivation. I need to fight. Second fate, or rather, the pressure and provocation from the other fates, finally aroused the madness in Chen Hao's bones. He directly sent out a system message. Arena mode charges. I'll simulate the real-time situation of one of the arenas in the great world of Xiandi for you to choose from. Entrance fee, challenge fee, betting money, etc. are all the same. The only difference is that your opponent is me, and I'll simulate the same battle strength of the opponent you choose. Is there a problem? Can I choose Tianhua Planet's arena? Chen Hao asked after a slight pause. Previously, Yang Lin had said that because he was the only cultivator on Earth, there wouldn't be a separate condensing facility. She would play with Chen Hao. However, Chen Hao hadn't expected that the system would simulate the information of other arenas. Since that was the case, Chen Hao naturally wanted to see which arena he could choose. Tianhua Planet, in the great world of Xiandi, was the main planet of the Immortal Emperor's first academy. It was also one of the strongest main planets among the 3,000 main planets. The monstrous geniuses of the first academy, as well as the experts of the various top forces on Tianhua Planet, would naturally appear in Tianhua Planet's arena. Sure. Any other questions? None. Beep, beep, beep. Following Chen Hao's words, a huge display screen suddenly appeared in front of him. Densely packed names, realms, battle records, status, and other information were displayed. Buzz. At the same time, in the cultivation room, the space between the eyebrows of Chen Hao's original body blossomed with a dazzling light. The mysterious space of the immortal realm directly devoured 1,000 of the immortal essence crystals that Chen Hao had stored in the spirit realm's helmet. Please choose your opponent. A voice that didn't contain any human emotions, but was exceptionally pleasant to the ears, rang directly in Chen Hao's ears. Chen Hao stared at Yang Lin, who was right in front of him, a little dumbfounded. 3 more, 7 more. Chapter 1292. Since Chen Hao stepped into the immortal dimension, he'd only heard Yang Liuyan's voice and never seen her. Her voice that was pleasant to the ear like the sound of nature caused all men to be unable to refrain from wanting to see her beautiful appearance, and the pure man Chen Hao was naturally no exception. Especially after a series of interactions, Chen Hao confirmed that Yang Lin was not a simple NPC, but was full of humanity. More accurately, she was a real existence, and he was even more curious about her. And now, Chen Hao finally saw Yang Lin in person, but what made Chen Hao extremely shocked and surprised was extremely disappointed. How could it be like this? That voice was as beautiful as the sounds of nature. Although her appearance was not to the extent that it could scare people to death, she was really too ordinary, too ordinary. At best, she had a curvaceous and exquisite figure that was worthy of her heavenly voice. Her appearance was really not complimentary at all. This was really a far cry from Chen Hao's guess, and he could not help but be shocked. Please choose your opponent. Yang Liuyan's rather robotic voice sounded again. Cough, cough. Chen Hao kept his shocked and disappointed expression and coughed awkwardly. His gaze quickly swept through the information on the display screen in front of him, and he realized that there were only a few opponents for him to choose from, and they were all rookies with 0 battle records. There were no bets. There was no other way. Chen Hao could only choose from them. After all, being able to simulate a battle with him on Earth was already very good. What else did he want? Moreover, Chen Hao was very clear that the special mode that Yang Luyan had activated for him was definitely equivalent to a super cheat. The entry fee, challenge fee, bets, and other conditions were all real, but the opponents were all simulated by Yang Luyan. In other words, Chen Hao could choose any of the opponents he met, and he did not have to worry about the opponent rejecting his challenge at all. After all, Yang Luyan was only using a bunch of data from the Tianhua planet arena. In this super cheat mode, Chen Hao did not have to worry about the consumption of immortal essence crystals at all. Boom! The moment Chen Hao confirmed his opponent, Yang Luoyan's aura suddenly changed, and at the same time, a mysterious wave surged around the two of them. What made Chen Hao extremely shocked was that this world, under the mysterious wave that Chen Hao could not understand at all, changed on its own and became a huge arena with a barrier seal. Chi 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 chi. Without any opening words, the moment the arena seal was completed, Yang Luoyan's aura surged wildly, and a majestic and terrifying pressure suddenly swept across the area. Boom! Immediately, a great battle erupted. Chen Hao began his crazy challenge journey. It's definitely the general outline of the Dao. Only the general of Dao. That day, Ling Feng, who had returned to the palace and started to digest the light of memory that Chen Hao had imparted to him, woke up in shock at dawn the next day. Ao Guang had not come into contact with the complete general of Dao, but he was sure that the light of memory that Fatty had imparted to him was definitely the content of the general of Dao. The reason was very simple. He had seen it, but he, the great Daoist Jingxian, could not remember it at all. Only the legendary general of Dao could be so mysterious. Otherwise, why could he not remember it? Of course, just as Fatty had said, Ling Feng still retained a little bit of the general of Dao that Fatty had completely comprehended. Unfortunately, even if it was just a little bit, he did not understand it at all for the time being. Fatty, what kind of monster is he? Inheritance, this is an inheritance, and it's an inheritance for someone else. How is this possible? Ling Feng said to himself in shock. To be able to condense the general of Dao into a light of memory and pass it to someone else, and to remember a little when he had not comprehended it, if this was not an inheritance, what was it? This was something that no one had ever done in the legends. But Fatty had actually done it. Almost at the same time, Xue Fian and Ao Guang were also in their own cultivation rooms. They were in the same state of shock as Ling Feng. Unfortunately, in the face of such a precious gift from Fatty, the three of them felt that they could not comprehend it at all. At least, there was no possibility of comprehending it at all now. They could only think about it after they had improved their cultivation level. This also made the three of them feel that Fatty's strength was even more unfathomable. At the same time, they were more inclined to believe that Fatty was most likely the reincarnation of a celestial emperor. Tang Long Planet, the first-class Tang Long Academy. In the Tang Long Hall, Li Wuxiang, who had just returned from the Dahua Academy, sat cross-legged. His gaze slowly swept across the 20 young men and women who were sitting side by side. He did not speak for a long time, causing the 20 of them to be surprised and slightly nervous at the same time. Among the 20 young men and women, 10 of them were from the Grand Mist Supremacy Realm, and the rest were from the Daoist Golden Wonderland. Each of their auras was extremely powerful in their respective cultivation level. Even Chen Hao did not dare to underestimate them. Master, could it be that the disciples recruited by the Dahua Academy this year are also very strong? Among the 10 young men from the Grand Mist Supremacy Realm, the female disciple with the strongest aura, a beautiful face, and a hot figure who looked extremely sexy but had an invisible domineering aura took the lead and asked first. Dean Li Wuxiang glanced at the woman, and his furrowed brows finally relaxed a little. He shook his head slightly and said, "The disciples recruited by the Dahua Academy this year are indeed very strong, but ours are not bad either. It's not enough to make you worry, Master." "Then, Master, what are you? A great era is coming. First-rate academy, we have been outside the top 100 for nearly 1,000,000 years. I thought that we would have a chance to enter the top 100 in the next batch, but I, your master, have come to realize that there is no hope for the next batch as well. In these 100 years, especially in the last 10 years, countless monstrous geniuses have appeared. There are even some personal disciples and successors of some great old figures who won't die. In addition, there are also many extremely monstrous outsiders who have appeared. An old friend of mine who is proficient in the great deduction arts said that a great era is coming for the cultivation world. The door to the celestial realm that no one has opened for countless years will be opened in the near future. Ah! Li Wuxiang's words caused the eyes of the 20 young disciples to widen. And you will be the generation with the most hope. Perhaps this is the reason why so many monstrous geniuses have appeared one after another. Even more shocking is that the Emperor constellation has appeared in the chaotic space. The Emperor constellation? Emperor constellation? Dean, what does the Emperor constellation mean? A young disciple could not help but ask. In the endless galaxy and the vast starry sky, there are countless greater worlds, primitive secret realms, and nirvana realms. Every greater world, primitive secret realm, and nirvana realms once had an expert at the celestial emperor level. Celestial emperors are immortal existences who have jumped out of the 3 realms and the 5 elements. They have truly transcended the long river of fate. But now there is not a single celestial emperor. Billions of years ago, there was a period of history that had disappeared. Today, billions of years later, everything related to the celestial realm and the celestial emperor level can only be heard in legends. No one has seen it. Of course, these legends are not baseless. Some of them originate from ancient ruins and Dao marks. One of the legends that has existed for countless years, and almost no one believes it, is the legend of the Emperor constellation. Chapter 1293. The Legend of the Emperor Constellation. Master, what is it? The Emperor Constellation of Chaos has appeared, and the Celestial Emperor of the Great Thousand Worlds has appeared. Li Wuxiang raised his head to look at the sky. His gaze seemed to penetrate the huge palace and enter the boundless chaos space. His low voice contained a kind of respect for the heavenly Tao. The Emperor Constellation of Chaos has appeared, and the Celestial Emperor of the Great Thousand Worlds has appeared. With just 2 sentences, the 20 disciples present were all shocked. What did it mean for the Celestial Emperor to appear? The appearance of an Emperor star means that a reincarnated Celestial Emperor will be born. Now, the Emperor Constellation of Chaos has appeared. The Emperor Constellation. Li Wuxiang's next words were even more shocking. According to my old friend's prediction, in the next 100 years, a few terrifying monstrous geniuses will appear in the world of cultivation. Moreover, they should be from the Daoist Golden Wonderland and the Grand Mist Supremacy Realm. Perhaps, as he spoke, Li Wuxiang looked at the 20 young men and women present again. After a slight pause, he continued, perhaps there are reincarnated celestial emperors among you who have yet to awaken. It can't be? Of course, the probability of this is very small, but it can't be ruled out. However, no matter what, all of you are heaven's proud sons in the immortal emperor world. Since you are able to catch up to this once-in-a-billion-year grand era, then you must have the ambition to reach the peak. Regardless of whether you succeed or not, your life will not be in vain. All right, I've gathered all of you here to tell you that in half a year's time, we will have a friendly exchange with the University of Dahua. Don't let your guard down. What I told you before is no longer accurate. This batch of new students is very strong. Yun Tian, the original first seat of the Daoist Golden Wonderland, was defeated by the new students. Dean, this is nothing, right? Yun Tian's strength is barely enough to be my opponent. Brother Xichao still defeated me, didn't he? A disciple of the Daoist Golden Wonderland said proudly. I was just lucky, the young man called Xichao said modestly with a slight smile. There were 2 new students who defeated Yun Tian. When the 2 of them were fighting for the position of first seat, one of them actually triggered a heaven-defying punishment. What? Everyone was shocked, but the young man named Xichao and the strongest sexy woman in the Grand Mist Supremacy Realm were not too surprised. Clearly, defying heaven's punishment was not enough of a deterrent to the 2 of them. She was a sexy woman from the Grand Mist Supremacy Realm. She was famous even in the University of Dahua, nicknamed Queen. She was the direct disciple of Li Wuxiang, the dean of Tanglong Academy, and the chief student of Tanglong Academy's Grandmist Supremacy Realm, Ding Ling. Other than that, there are 3 other rookies who are second only to the 2 of them. Among the 3, one of them is a descendant of the Monkey King. Descendant of the Monkey King? This time, even the calm Xichao and Ding Ling frowned slightly. Clearly, Li Wuxiang's words of descendant of the Monkey King shocked the 2 of them. The bloodline of the Monkey King was said to be invincible among those of the same level. Yet, they hadn't been able to obtain the position of chief disciple. Just how strong were those 2? Hence, it's best not to underestimate the Dahua Academy. Naturally, there's no need for you guys to be too worried. The descendants of the Monkey King have yet to reach the peak of their cultivation base. That was why he wasn't as strong as the other 2. Xichao should be a bit stronger than them. Dean, what's the name of the Monkey King's descendant? What's the name of the other 2? Can you give us their specific information? Don't worry, I'll give it to you guys later. The situation in the Daoist Golden Wonderland is basically like this. In the Grandmist Supremacy Realm, Tian, you can't be careless. There are 3 rookies who are very strong. They directly took the top 3 in the Grandmist Supremacy Realm. One of them stayed in the First Academy for over 1,000 years. One of them is the founder of the Starlight Squad. He's also the strongest of the 3. The last one is the leader of the 4 great talents of planet Dawa, Tang Hu of the Tang family. Oh, it seems like this time will be interesting. You little girl. Master, don't worry. I've never underestimated any opponent. That's good. This is their information and all that I've gathered. Go back and take a good look. Although it's a friendly competition, it's also related to our Tanglong Academy's fortune and reputation. If Dahua Academy can't win consecutively, what hope do we have to become a top academy? Alright, you guys can go now. Yes. Tanglong Academy and Dahua Academy were brother academies. They had an exchange once every 10 years, and each academy would send 200 disciples. The Daoist Golden Wonderland and the Grandmist Supremacy Realm would send 100 each. As for the Dao Severing Perfected Immortal Realm, they were not included in the exchange. It was only a realm that was more malleable than the other 2. And for each realm, there would be 50 senior students and 50 new students. Only in this way could the significance of the competition be highlighted. It could be said that it was a competition that promoted and encouraged each other. Under normal circumstances, it was scheduled to be held half a year after the recruitment of new students. All along, the 2 academies had been on par with each other. However, in the last 3 years, Tanglong Academy had won 3 consecutive victories because of Li Wuxiang's hard work. This time, he had made a special trip to Dahua Academy again hard work. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you'll never be defeated. The effect was more or less there. What? Emperor's Star Group? You're saying that the Emperor's Star Group has appeared in the chaotic space? A few days after Li Wuxiang learned about the Emperor's Star Group from his old friend, the news spread throughout the cultivation world of the great world of Xiandi. The Emperor's Star has appeared, and the Immortal Emperor has appeared. No wonder so many old fellows' successors have accumulated to this generation. No wonder more and more geniuses have emerged in the past 100 years, and they're getting stronger and stronger. The Immortal Emperor has appeared, who is the reincarnated spirit of all things. Countless people's gazes were fixed on the super monsters that had emerged in the past few years. Unfortunately, it should have been easy to sense the aura of the spirit of all things, but no one could discover who was the reincarnated Immortal Emperor. This was because the Emperor's Star had an invisible seal. Beep, 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 battle, enlightenment, battle, enlightenment. After dozens of cycles, Chen Hao, who was immersed in enlightenment, suddenly received a verification request. Pavilion Master? What surprised Chen Hao was that it was actually the Pavilion Master of the true martial pavilion, Mo Shilin. Previously, Chen Hao's communication number had been reported to the true martial pavilion. No one else could know, but the Pavilion Master had the authority. After all, many communications were conducted in the immortal world. Little fatty, you're in seclusion again? Yes. In this world where the strong prey on the weak and experts are as common as the clouds, I feel that the Mount Pear Mountain is huge. I have to work hard. I don't want to get beaten up. Ha, you really know how to talk. However, you're right. Hard work is as important as talent. You can't do without either. Pavilion Master, is there something you need? Yes, there is indeed something. The Dean is looking for you. There's a special mission that needs you to do. Ah? Pavilion Master, I'm still in class. There are still 3 courses in the middle of the month and 2 at the end of the month. If I go out to do a mission, I'm afraid I'll be delayed. Don't worry. Since the Dean asked you to go, as long as you complete the mission, you can make up for any missed classes. Is that so? Pavilion Master, what mission is it? I don't know the details yet, but the Dean specifically asked you and Wan Yishui to do it. It should be an academy mission to compete for resources. This is the Dean taking care of you. Quickly leave the immortal world and report to the Dean. Chapter 1294. Academy missions to compete for resources? Chenhao asked, puzzled. The great world of Xiandi is vast and boundless. Not to mention the great world of Xiandi, there are still many areas on the 3,000 main planets that cultivators have yet to set foot in. The various academies and powers are also searching for secret realms, heavenly treasures, ancient legacies, and so on. If 2 or more powers discover a certain resource at the same time, the usual solution is to send disciples of the Daoist Golden Wonderland or Hongmeng to fight for it. This is a good opportunity for you to gain experience and obtain some resources immediately. This is a great benefit. Of course, the greater the benefit, the greater the risk. When fighting for resources, life and death are your own responsibility. This type of mission is usually assigned by the Dean and other higher-ups. It is not publicly announced and freely accepted. We call it academy missions. Alright, hurry up and go. Only the Dean knows the specifics. Alright. Chen Hao made a sound of acknowledgement and cut off his communication with Mo Shilin. He then sent a message to the 8th anima, Chen Ritian. He was going to leave, and Chen Ritian naturally couldn't appear in the immortal world under his identity. He also sent a message to Si Xian. After exiting the immortal realm, Chen Hao cancelled his dual cultivation with Si Xian and left the palace. Sister Shui? What a coincidence, let's go together. Chen Hao had just stepped out of the palace when he saw Wan Yishui flying in the air. In the challenge competition, Wan Yishui had narrowly defeated the 8th master with her azure silk jade wave art. She was already one of the top 10 masters in the true martial pavilion. Naturally, her palace had been moved to the top 10 palaces, next to Chen Hao's. Looking at the fatty who took the initiative to come over, Wan Yishui looked a little angry. She glared at the fatty, but didn't say anything. However, she muttered in her heart, why would the Dean arrange for her to go on a mission with the fatty? After all, Chen Ritian, Xue Fian, and the others were stronger than her. Of course, although she didn't understand and hated the fatty's annoying face, she didn't reject him in the slightest. Academy missions were rare glory and excellent training opportunities. After not seeing you for a few days, Sister Shui, you've become even more beautiful. Your green silk jade ripple technique seems to have improved again? Impressive, I like it. Damn fatty, don't come so close to me. Wan Yishui said angrily, but he was surprised at the fatty's eyesight. After going through the challenge competition, she had indeed gained new insights. Her azure silk jade ripple technique had also made a new breakthrough. However, she had not released the slightest bit of the azure silk jade ripple technique's aura, yet it had still been sensed by the fatty. Chi. Wan Yishui sped up. However, the fatty revealed a harmless smile, shook his head, and followed behind Wan Yishui, flying in tandem. However, soon, Wan Yishui couldn't take it anymore. It was as if he felt the fatty's lecherous gaze on him, making him feel uncomfortable all over. Damn fatty, don't stay behind me. Then, is it above you or below you? You go to the front. Compared to the perverted fatty, Wan Yishui was too naive. He didn't hear fatty's flirting at all. He braked and let Fatty fly first. Although it would be best if he didn't go with Fatty, the two of them had to go to the dean's palace together. There was no other way. The Fatty swung his big butt, chuckled, and flashed away like lightning. When the two of them arrived at Dean Qing Wanxiang's palace, a young man and woman stood proudly in front of Qing Wanxiang. Their expressions were arrogant, and they looked at Fatty and Wan Yishui with a somewhat condescending gaze. Daoist Golden Wonderland. Your aura is very strong and you look very cool. Could it be that you're also here for a mission? Such an infuriating gaze made Fatty squint his eyes slightly. His white and chubby face revealed a harmless smile again as he sized up the two people. The young man was tall and slender. His face was like jade, and he wore a white robe that was spotless. He looked like a dog. The woman was very beautiful. She wore a black Daoist robe that showed off her mature and sexy figure. Just from the aura of the two of them standing side by side and complementing each other, one could guess that the two of them were real Daoist companions. Moreover, they had cultivated for many years with the fusion of yin and yang. Dean Cheng, are these the partners you chose for us? The young man asked in a rather arrogant tone. That's right. Old man, let me introduce you to each other. This is Li Yuan, our Daoist Academy's Daoist Golden Wonderland's prospective chief disciple. His combat strength and talent are very strong. This is Wan Yishui. Although she's not the strongest female disciple in the academy, her Azure Silk Jade Ripple technique can allow you to display stronger combat strength as a whole. Is that so? That sounds good. Unfortunately, my feelings tell me that it's not much. However, it doesn't matter. When we took the task, we never thought of relying on others to complete it. Just help us. The young man's words were even more arrogant than his arrogant expression. Although the woman didn't speak, her peacock-like proud eyes were obviously the same as the man's. She didn't like the fat man and Wan Yishui at all. Dean Qing Wanxiang frowned slightly, but he couldn't say anything. The two of them were foreign aid that he had hired with a lot of money. Although they were a little arrogant, Qing Wanxiang knew that they did have the qualifications and strength to be arrogant. Dean Qing Wanxiang sent a voice transmission to calm down the smiling Fatty and the slightly frowning Wan Yishui, who was obviously very unhappy with this adulterous couple. Dean Qing Wanxiang continued, the two of them will cooperate with the two of you. In this competition, we will have to rely on the two of you. Fat man, Yishui, let me introduce you. This is Xiao Mantian, a direct disciple of the Xiao clan of the Star River King. Ah? The fat man suddenly exclaimed in an exaggerated manner. Xiao clan? Although Wan Yishui was not as exaggerated as the fat man, she also showed a touch of surprise. There was no other way. What kind of concept was the Xiao clan of the Star River King? Anyone would be surprised if they heard it. Xiao Mantian and his Dao companion were not surprised by the two's surprise. They had experienced such things many times, which made their natural sense of superiority stronger and more arrogant. In time, Xiao Mantian may have the hope of becoming the Daoist Jingxian king. His combat strength and talent are extremely heaven-defying, and he has a very high reputation in the great world of Xiandi. This is his Dao companion, also a genius disciple of the Xiao clan, Feng Hanwei. Together with Mantian, their combat strength is extremely terrifying. Old Man specially invited them to be foreign aid for our academy this time. Dean, what is the task? Pavilion Master didn't tell me. Wan Yishui asked. Wan Yishui was no stranger to foreign aid, but under normal circumstances, due to face and other problems, they generally wouldn't ask for foreign aid. This was the first reason. The second reason was that the price of asking for foreign aid was too high. Chapter 1295. Therefore, unless it was an extremely important matter, they would not spend a huge amount of money to ask for outside help. The so-called outside help was basically the strongest experts within a certain realm, and it had nothing to do with the realm itself. This was because the competition was limited to those within the same realm, and it was only a competition of the combat power of those within the same realm. In other words, only those with extremely strong combat power within the same realm were qualified to be outside help. Just like this time, The University of Dahua had agreed with the other competing forces that the contestants from the Daoist Golden Wonderland would compete. Therefore, they could only invite the strongest existences from the Daoist Golden Wonderland as outside help. Under normal circumstances, the super experts of the Daoist Jingxian and Hongmeng Supremes, who were often used to compete for the ownership of resources, were very popular. This was especially so for famous cultivators like Xiaoman Tian and his wife, who would receive many invitations. Of course, before the competition began, the identity of the outside help would be kept a secret. A month ago, in the chaotic space between the 5 main planets, Dahua Planet, Dark North Planet, Cloud Sea Planet, Thunderclap Planet, and Bitter Sea Planet, there was a strong disturbance of the heavens and earth. Perhaps it was because of the recent appearance of the Emperor Star Group, which caused the change in the atmosphere, but when the experts from the 5 main planets rushed over, they discovered an ancient secret realm. Primitive secret realm? Chen Hao asked in surprise. That's right, and it's the Daoist Golden Wonderland's primitive secret realm. After a discussion among the upper echelons of the 5 main planets, it was decided that each force would send 2 men and 2 women to enter the secret realm at the same time. The time limit is half a year, and the total value of the heaven and earth spiritual items, absolute arts, and inheritances will determine the ownership of the primitive secret realm. No one knows the exact situation inside, but since it's a primitive secret realm, the heaven and earth spiritual items, inheritances, and other resources will definitely not be bad. This is a very important matter to our university. So, little fatty, I hope you won't hold back. Dean, do I look like I'm holding back? Chen Hao asked awkwardly. In his battle with Yun Tian and the 8th anima Chen Hao had indeed held nothing back. However, he hadn't expected the dean to think that he had held back. Only you know, old man is just reminding you. Ishui, put aside the conflict between you and Fatty for now. Cooperate well. In this half a year, everything you obtain in the primitive mystic realm will belong to you after its value has been appraised. In addition, if you can let our Faculty of Medicine successfully obtain the rights to it, you will also receive a percentage of the commission from the primitive mystic realm. Dean Cheng is really generous to actually treat the 2 of them as external aid. With all due respect, since you offered the same conditions as us, why don't I step forward and invite 2 good friends who are definitely stronger than them? Xiaoman Tian looked at the fatty and Wan Yishui before speaking to the dean with disdain. Obviously, he was too proud to acknowledge Fatty and Wan Yishui's strength. Xiaoman Tian, could it be that you're not confident? Not confident? Xiaoman Tian smiled and shook his head as he asked. After a slight pause, he continued, no matter how confident you are, you should understand that nothing is absolute in this world. There's always someone better than you. It's better to be safe than sorry. For the same price, I can help you invite 2 external aid who are stronger than them. You'll have a greater chance of success, so why not? Most importantly, the people I invite have cooperated with us several times before, so it'll be easier for us to work together. No need. I believe in the 2 of you. Also, you've neglected something. Li Yuan and Wan Yishui are both genius disciples of our Faculty of Medicine. Giving them more benefits is something our Faculty of Medicine should do. Furthermore, the 2 of them aren't weak. It'll be a rare opportunity for them to gain experience. Not to mention that their strength is only average to me, this level of competition for resources still requires experience. A rookie who only knows how to fight, even if he's stronger, won't be able to obtain the final victory. What's more, rookies who aren't strong enough. However, it doesn't matter. Since Dean Cheng has decided to do this, then so be it. As long as they don't drag us down, there won't be a problem. To put it bluntly, we only have victory in our eyes. We don't necessarily care about anything else. Therefore, life and death are up to fate. If an accident really happens, it has nothing to do with us. That's natural. Little fatty, Yishui, for this mission, you have to cooperate with them. Coming back alive is the first priority, and completing the mission is the second priority. Do you understand what I mean? Understood. Chen Hao and Wan Yishui responded at the same time. Although they were unhappy with the arrogant Xiaoman Tian, they did not say anything. From the aura of the two and the attitude of the dean towards them, they could see that the two of them were very important to this mission. In Wan Yishui's view, the other party did have the qualifications to be arrogant. However, the fatty, who also did not say anything, was not so simple. Just the identity of the celestial river king as a direct descendant of the Shao family made the fatty a little unhappy. How dare they despise this master fatty and act like they're nothing in front of this master fatty? The fatty did not say anything because he knew that it was useless to say anything. Some people needed to use real actions and real strength to slap their faces. Well, let's go. We'll talk as we go. Sush. Chen Wanxiang waved his hand and sent out 4 energy beams that wrapped around Chen Hao, Xiaoman Tian, and the other 2. Then he stepped into the void. Buzz. After entering the chaotic space, Chen Wanxiang's aura suddenly gushed out, and then his speed soared by thousands of times. So fast. Wan Yishui was shocked. Is this the speed of a true immortal king? Chen Hao was also surprised. At this moment, Chen Hao felt that his great teleportation technique was nothing in front of Chen Wanxiang. There was no comparison at all. Even if I push the great teleportation technique to the extreme, I can't even reach 1/10,000th of its speed. A true immortal king? Only with this kind of strength does he have to travel in the starry sky? Even though Chen Hao was protected by Chen Wanxiang's energy, he was still shocked. Shuttling in the violent chaotic energy at such a high speed seemed to have formed a continuous energy storm. With his strong soul perception, Chen Hao was sure that if Chen Wanxiang withdrew his energy protection at this moment, Chen Hao, Wan Yishui, and Xiaoman Tian would all be smashed to pieces. In front of an absolute realm, even the most powerful magical power and law are nothing. What Chen Wanxiang used was the simplest flying magical power, but it turned the speed that Chen Hao was so confident in into nothing. Of course, Chen Hao's confidence was not affected at all. He was not stupid enough to compare himself with a true immortal king. This time, more than 3,000 forces from the 5 main planets are participating in the competition. Each force is made up of 2 men and 2 women. However, for the 4 of you, your biggest opponent is the top academy, the Hogu College. The top academies were independent forces outside the 3,000 main planets, but it did not mean that they were not on the 3,000 main planets. The Hogu College was located on the Bitter Sea Star and was one of the most powerful forces in this competition. Chapter 1296. Next are the Dark North Academy, Cloud Sea Academy, Thunderclap Academy, and Bitter Sea Academy. Apart from them, the other academies and powers are nothing to be afraid of. However, don't think that it's just a simple competition. Whoever obtains the most spiritual items of heaven and earth and ultimate skill inheritances will win. This is a competition without any rules. The strong will be respected. When the time comes, killing and robbing will definitely occur. It's even possible that some forces will join forces. Therefore, you must be careful. At the same time, you must be prepared to join forces. Better safe than sorry. As the only top academy, Deep Ancient Academy probably won't be able to lower themselves to ask for outside help. However, the other 4 first-rate academies will definitely do the same. As for who they will invite, we don't know for the time being. In short, treat this seriously and be careful. 1 back, 5 back. Chen Wanxiang led the 4 of them as he quickly flew forward. At the same time, he gave instructions to Chen Hao and Wan Yishui. Chen Wanxiang didn't need to say much to the arrogant Xiaoman Tian's Dao companion. They were one of the more famous Grand Luo experts in the great world of Xiandi. They had acted as outside help many times and were experienced and powerful. What Chen Wanxiang said was only the most basic information. In the chaotic space, rumbling sounds could be heard. It was like a spatial storm as they moved forward at lightning speed. Even with such astonishing speed, they still needed 10 days to reach their destination. Chen Wanxiang didn't feel anything when he was giving instructions, but after he finished, the atmosphere between Chen Hao and Wan Yishui became a little strange. It was unknown whether Chen Wanxiang did it intentionally or not, but when he protected the 2 of them, he also protected Chen Hao and Wan Yishui in an energy seal. just like how he protected Xiao Mantian and his Dao companion. It could be said that they were very close to each other, and the faint fragrance of Wan Yishui's body could be clearly smelled. The two of them stared at each other for a full minute. Only then did Wan Yishui snort and turn her face to the side with a slightly red face. The fatty shrugged indifferently. He couldn't help but smile. He found that this girl was quite cute. It was just that she was too fierce in the arena battle, causing him to use the divine art of buttocks to suppress her. More importantly, she sent him a sound transmission and said very shameless and flirtatious words. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so brooding right now. After all, although Wan Yishui losing to Fatty in the beginning was embarrassing, it definitely didn't exist now. Fatty had even taken care of first seat Yuan, Yun Tian. What was there to be embarrassed about? Take your eyes off me. Perhaps sensing Fatty's gaze, Wan Yishui, who didn't want to lose his temper in public, maintained an unchanged expression and suddenly transmitted a message to Chen Hao. I say, Sister Shui, aren't you being too nosy? It seems that you have a deep prejudice against me. Why don't you find some time and let me talk to you? Scram. Fatty's words infuriated Wan Yishui so much that he almost exploded. Find some free time. Find some time. Let Lord Fatty play with you. You don't have to doubt it. You didn't hear me wrong. The number one pleasure in my life is to play with little girls like you. Rolling around in bed is quite interesting. When the time comes, I'll let you have a taste of Lord Fatty's two great chain divine techniques. Your love for Lord Fatty won't be in vain. The first style of Lord Fatty's chain divine technique, buttocks divine technique. When my buttocks press down, I'll sit on all the beauties in the world. The second style, golden spear does not fall. Fatty's words made Wan Yishui involuntarily recall the shameless words Fatty had said to her during the arena battle. Anger is harmful to the body. Calm down, calm down. Don't hold it in. Our cooperation has just begun. The principal said that you should cooperate with Fat Bro well. Shameless. I won't let you off. Wan Yishui was indeed holding it in. Her face was red and green, and her delicate body was trembling slightly. She was absolutely furious, but in front of the principal, she couldn't lose her temper. Furthermore, even if she did, would it be of any use? Wan Yishui suddenly used a sword of her mind to cut off the anger in her heart. At the same time, she blocked off her six senses. Out of sight, out of mind. If this continued, she was afraid that she would lose her composure. No matter how much she hated this damnable Fatty, she had to endure it. After all, this was the first time she had received an academy mission, and it was such an important one. To her, it was an unprecedented opportunity. No matter what, she had to do her best to complete it. To be able to cut it off so easily, your mental state and willpower are not bad? Looks like the medicine I used is not strong enough. Fatty thought in his heart, and did not continue to provoke her. Looking at Xiao Mantian and his partner who were sitting back to back, as if they had already entered a state of enlightenment, Chen Hao's eyes flashed with a trace of seriousness. Even though Chen Hao didn't want to admit it, he had to admit that Xiao Mantian and his partner did indeed make him feel threatened. What he was proud of was perhaps only their outer appearance. How could a genius who didn't even want to waste this little bit of time not be strong? Phew! Fatty turned his head and heaved a sigh of relief, blowing Wan Yishui's long hair. He seemed to be deep in thought, and slowly entered a state of cultivation. Perhaps it was because the teachers in charge of the two associations were best friends, or perhaps it was because of some unknown reason, but the Painting Association and the Ancient Martial Arts Association had decided to hold an exchange meeting on the same day and at the same place. The purpose of this exchange meeting was to welcome the new members of the association. Big brother, second brother, tell me the truth, how do you compare to that damnable Fatty? Third brother, where did your confidence go? You have to know that you are the head of the 4 great talents of the great planet, and you are an expert in both painting and calligraphy. In the younger generation, not to mention the great planet, even in the great world of Xiandi, how many people are better than you? Li Yuan merely created a unique style, and his painting skills are far from yours. Your painting is definitely much better than his. That's right. Third brother, there's one more thing. Don't forget that painting skills and skills are only one aspect. What's more important is still fame. With the same skills and skills, fame is the door that shakes people's hearts. Unknowingly, it will add a layer of halo. How can your fame be compared to his? Big brother, second brother, since you said so, I am relieved. In this exchange meeting, I must surpass him. Teacher Rulin will definitely like my painting. Contains my love for Teacher Rulin from the bottom of my heart, a love that will never change until death. Third brother, you are so infatuated. But second brother, I support you. In terms of ancient martial arts, you will see how your second brother slaps his face. Ha! Let's go, it's almost time. Murong Qianhua, Xin Yuanshan, and Tang, who had been waiting for this exchange meeting for a long time. Especially Tang, who had been holding back his anger. No matter what, he had to win the glory that belonged to him in the exchange meeting, and most importantly, win the favor of Teacher Rulin. Unfortunately, they did not know that Fatty was already outside the Great Planet and was destined to be absent. Chapter 1297. We're almost there. Look, this area is in the chaotic space, right at the intersection of the passages of the 5 main stars. Usually, flying machines and cultivators above true immortal level pass by here frequently. Therefore, before we found out, many experts must have sent their disciples, trusted aides, and other cultivators from the Daoist Golden Wonderland into here. There's no doubt that this is a potential danger, so you have to be careful. After flying for 10 days, Qing Wanxiang finally arrived at the area where the secret realm was exposed. At the same time, he removed their guards. Xiao Mantian suddenly opened his eyes and said proudly, "They're just loose cultivators without any organization. The more the better. If we run into any of them, they'll only become my free labor. Don't let your guard down and act cautiously. Although these people are mostly a motley crew, there's no lack of experts. Especially now that the Great Era has arrived and the Emperor stars have appeared, it's hard to say if there's any soul of all things who has awakened their memories. We have to be careful. Dean Qing is really steady," Xiao Mantian said calmly with a smile. After saying that, he closed his eyes and stopped talking. Obviously, Qing Wanxiang's words had no effect on him. "Dean, what do you mean by the Great Era has arrived? The Emperor stars have appeared, and the soul of all things?" However, Chen Hao suddenly opened his eyes wide and asked curiously. He was even more shocked. Just from the literal meaning, Chen Hao could guess a thing or two. The soul of all things. Wasn't the little nurse Lu Hui the soul of all things who was the reincarnation of an immortal emperor? Chen Hao knew very well how powerful Lu Hui was. Chen Wanxiang glanced at the fatty, then told Chen Hao about the emperor's stars that had recently shaken the entire cultivation world. To Chen Wanxiang's admiration, not only was Fatty not worried in the slightest after he understood the situation, his expression was instead filled with uncontrollable excitement. Without a doubt, it was a type of battle intent that was hidden in his bones, a battle intent to compete with the strong. Chen Wanxiang had never seen a true spirit of all existences before, and he didn't know how monstrous it would be. However, Chen Wanxiang was clear that under normal circumstances, spirits of all existences would hide themselves before they truly awakened. And the fatty who dared to compete with the spirit of all existences, could he be the reincarnation of an immortal emperor? Chen Wanxiang could not be sure, and no one could be sure. So many people? A few minutes later, Chen Hao and the others saw figures standing proudly in the air or sitting cross-legged on the star fragments. Basically, they were in groups of 5, and the leaders were extremely powerful old men. Obviously, they were leaders of forces like Qing Wanxiang. The other 4 were 2 men and 2 women from the Daoist Golden Wonderland. Every one of them had a very powerful aura. Among the nearly 10,000 people present, even the weakest one would be above average in a first-rate academy. What a powerful aura! Is he from the University of Dahua? How can he be so strong? The moment Cheng Wanxiang, Chen Hao, and the other 2 appeared, they attracted the attention of everyone present. The probing telepathic thoughts of the experts pressed down unscrupulously. Unfortunately, under Cheng Wanxiang's deliberate protection, nobody could see through the disguise that Xiao Mantian and his wife had put on in advance. They could only sense the powerful auras emanating from them. "Hi, Dean Cheng, it's just as old man guessed. You came so late, where did you get the external aid from? His aura is quite strong. Don't say you didn't invite him. Old man only invited 2, and these 2 are disciples of our University of Dahua." The old guys gathered together as they spoke. The young men and women beside the old guys gathered around Chen Hao, Wan Yishui, and Xiao Mantian's wife. "Wan Yishui, you can come?" At this moment, among the several old men and dozens of male and female disciples who had gathered around, a male disciple looked at Wan Yishui in surprise. What's wrong with me coming?" Wan Yishui said angrily, her face turning red when she saw the person who had spoken. Obviously, the other party's tone was full of contempt, which made Wan Yishui feel embarrassed. Because, in the past, she really couldn't compare to the other party. "Senior Hao, you know her? Some time ago, I met her in a mission. The battle team she was in, they couldn't even withstand a single blow. They only had some poise, cough cough. Her strength is very ordinary. To think that she was chosen to come here, it's really strange." Wan Yishui was so angry that her face turned green and red, but she couldn't refute. Scram. But at this moment, a cold voice suddenly sounded out. Wan Yishui was slightly taken aback, but the fatty smiled heartlessly and looked at Xiao Mantian, who had disguised his aura and appearance. That sharp gaze was like a sharp sword that emitted a cold light, and it was terrifying. "What did you say?" The young man who had spoken just now frowned, and his face turned ugly. "I said scram." Boom. A majestic and terrifying aura suddenly gushed out from Xiao Mantian's body, but it seemed to have condensed into a line and was directed towards the young man who had spoken. Just as the young man's face turned grim and worried, a figure who had also concealed his presence and appearance suddenly stepped out from behind him and stood in front of the young man. "Brother, what kind of treatment did the University of Dahua give you? Why are you working so hard?" "We're just external aid, why are you so serious?" "Of course, I was forced by you to help this little beauty." "Oh, I understand, it's not that the University of Dahua gave you good treatment, but you've taken a liking to this little beauty, right? Bosom friends. It's a pity that as external aid, I can't just stand by and watch you make a move, right? It's you?" Xiao Mantian's brows furrowed. Even he didn't think that the other party would be able to talk so casually under his aura. More importantly, when he heard the other party's words, he instantly thought of someone. "You know me? That shouldn't be. My concealment skills are definitely top-notch, and furthermore, I have the support of the Dean of the Northern Nether Academy." "I understand you're trying to trick me, The person who had spoken suddenly exclaimed as he was laughing, and stared at Xiao Mantian without saying anything else. Everyone naturally knew that Xiao Mantian must have revealed the other party's true identity through voice transmission. "Don't talk nonsense with me, since I'm the external aid of the University of Dahua. Whoever dares to touch them will be touching me. Including you," Xiao Mantian said to the young man in front of him as he pointed at Wan Yishui, Chen Hao, and his Dao companion Feng Hanwei, who was standing some distance away from him. "It can't be, right? Brother, you're really domineering. Since you know who I am, do you really think that you're stronger than me? I'm not a coward." Chapter 1298. Although the person who spoke was surprised that Xiao Mantian had seen through his identity, there was no fear in his heart. There was still a faint smile on his face, and his tone was relaxed and mocking. "Is that so? Then go ahead and try." Xiao Mantian's eyes were as sharp as swords as he said coldly, I wasn't interested at first, but since you said so, I'll definitely satisfy you. You have to be prepared." "Threats? I hate threats the most. Not to mention them, even you would dare to make a move." "Let's wait and see," Xiao Mantian said coldly. He was ready to fight. However, this was clearly not the time to make a move. Both of them knew this. At this moment, a stream of light suddenly appeared, and a majestic aura attracted everyone's attention. Thick Ancient Academy. The crowd exclaimed after seeing the symbol on the person's chest. Thick Ancient Academy was the only top-notch academy among all the competing forces. It was undoubtedly the strongest competitor in the eyes of all the forces. Young Master of Saber and Sword, Ding Hao? I didn't expect him to come. The auras of the four are very strong. Ding Hao seems to be even stronger than the last time we met. Who is Ding Hao? Is he very strong? You don't even know Ding Hao? Well, you just came to the great world of Xiandi not long ago and haven't participated in the inter-school competition, so it's normal that you don't know him. Look, amongst the four of them, the one with the weakest aura and the most ordinary aura was Ding Hao. However, there was probably no one who hadn't recognized him after participating in the inter-academy competition that occurred once in 1,000 years. The young master of saber and sword, Ding Hao. Many people have been deceived by his appearance. This person has participated in 8 inter-school competitions and is one of the best among the geniuses of the top-notch academies. He cultivates in both saber and sword, and his saber and sword intent go hand in hand. His strength is extremely terrifying. In the most recent inter-school competition, I heard that he was preparing to enter the Hongmeng domain. I didn't expect that he hasn't gone yet. With him here, not to mention that we didn't ask for external help, even if we did, it would be difficult for us to win. Yeah, we should avoid the Thick Earth Academy as much as possible. They aren't people we can provoke. The crowd was discussing softly. They were all private conversations that were controlled within a small area, but Chen Hao, who had an abnormal perception, could clearly hear them. Chen Hao could not help but sigh when he sensed the arrival of the Thick Earth Academy and the other major factions. There were so many experts. It was definitely not an easy task to obtain victory in this mission. Not long after, all the cultivators at the golden celestial stage of the great all-embracing heaven were surrounded by endless celestial light. More than 3,000 powerful true celestial kings joined forces to break the barrier of the primitive secret realm and send them in. Wisps of brilliant immortal rays swept across the sky. Some were as quick as lightning, while others were slower. They appeared in the rift of the mystical ground from different angles. Chen Hao and Wan Yishui sat cross-legged facing each other in the powerful protective shackles formed by the immortal light. Their legs were almost touching each other, and their faces were very close to each other. Neither of them could move. Next to Chen Hao and Wan Yishui were Xiaoman Tian and his Dao partner, Feng Hanwei, who were also facing each other. Sister Shui, calm down. This is just the beginning. There's still 1 hour left. The fatty looked at Wan Yishui, who was full of hostility, and said softly with a smile that deserved a beating. The immortal rays were used to prevent people from getting too close to the mystical ground. Therefore, when they entered the mystical ground, Chen Hao and the others were bound by the immortal rays and would not regain their freedom until 1 hour later. Shut up. Why do you keep staring at me? If you don't look at me, how do you know I'm looking at you? You, humph. Just as the fatty was unscrupulously teasing Wan Yishui, Feng Hanwei snorted coldly in extreme displeasure. Her arrogant peacock-like eyes were filled with intense disdain and disgust. She turned her head to look at the fatty and Wan Yishui, and said condescendingly, "Did your dean send you here to flirt? I don't know if you're ignorant and fearless, or if you're just heartless. There are so many powerful people in this mission that even we have to do our best to deal with them. You guys have it easy. Wei, don't waste your breath on them. Idiots like them won't even know how they died." Xiaoman Tian said coldly. Then he looked at Chen Hao and Wan Yishui and said, "Once the immortal rays are gone, get out of here immediately. We don't have the energy to protect your lives, so we don't need burdens like you." Brother Tian is right. The appearance of Ding Hao and the others is destined to not be a simple matter of obtaining resources. With the strength of the two of you, you'll only be a burden to us. Feng Hanwei agreed. The reason why the two of them said that was because the four of them had mission tokens with them. If Chen Hao and Wan Yishui were with them, according to the cooperation agreement between them and the University of Dahua, they had the obligation to advance and retreat together. In other words, they were responsible for Qin Hao and Wan Yishui's lives. This was not what they wanted. Of course, there were two more important points. Firstly, Qin Hao's and Wan Yishui's auras really made them look down on them. Secondly, the expression and actions of this fatty, Qin Hao, seemed as if he didn't have the slightest bit of reverence towards them, who were high above them. His performance was too casual, which made them feel very disgusted. One had to know, not to mention the disciples of first-rate academies, even the disciples of top academies, who wouldn't be trembling with fear and reverence in front of them after knowing their identities. The words of the two of them made Wan Yishui frown slightly. His expression became serious, and he was a little worried and conflicted. He said, "Brother Xiao, Sister Feng, although we're not as strong as you, since the dean, however, at this moment," the fatty suddenly interrupted Wan Yishui and said in the same tone as Xiao Mantian, "Shui, don't waste your breath on them. Idiots like them won't even know how they died." The fatty only changed the way he addressed Wei to Shui, and the other words were exactly the same. After saying that, he narrowed his eyes and looked at Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei with disdain. "What did you say?" Xiao Mantian's expression turned cold, and his gaze seemed to have turned into a sharp sword light that shot towards Chen Hao's body. If not for the fact that Chen Hao was restrained by the celestial light, the terrifying pressure would have definitely pressed down on him like a huge mountain. The restriction of the immortal light has disappeared, so get lost immediately. We don't have the energy to protect your lives, so we don't need a burden like you. The fatty narrowed his eyes as if he did not see the killing intent in Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei's eyes. He still imitated Xiao Mantian's cold tone and said lightly. The chubby face, the eyes that flickered with a cold light, the slightly raised head, the calm and callous expression. Wan Yishui was dumbstruck, his heart trembling. Could it be that this damn fatty had gone crazy? He is the direct descendant of the Xiao clan of the Star River King. Back to Kunming. I owe everyone 20 credits in total. There are only a few days left in this month, so I can't pay it off. I'll try to pay it off next month. Chapter 1299. You're courting death. You think you can compete with us? Who do you think you are in front of Brother Tian? Feng Hanwei was unable to restrain her anger, and her reaction was even more intense than Xiao Mantian's. In fact, although she was Xiao Mantian's closest Dao companion, her words and actions always revolved around Xiao Mantian, and Xiao Mantian was her sky. After the restriction of the celestial light disappears, kneel in front of me and admit your mistake, and I'll spare your life. Otherwise, I'll kill you without mercy. Xiao Mantian looked at Fatty coldly for a few seconds before he said proudly, "No one dares to provoke me. Don't be so naive to think that I'll care about your dean. Even if you were a top academy, our Xiao family wouldn't care about you." Feng Hanwei said, "I'm so scared. Do you really think I'm easy to bully?" Buzz. Fatty's aura, which he had been restraining, suddenly burst out with his words. His fat, harmless face released an extremely cold aura at this moment. What made Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei's expressions change slightly was that the celestial light binding Fatty actually fluctuated slightly. How could this be? Even Xiao Mantian's aura could not cause any fluctuations under the restriction of the celestial light of a true celestial king, but this ordinary-looking Fatty could. "Damn Fatty, shut up." Wan Yishui, who was in shock, suddenly interrupted Qin Hao and said, "He's an outsider who has just arrived at the celestial realm. He doesn't know his place. Brother Xiao, Sister Feng, please don't lower yourself to his level. Please don't worry, we'll do our best to help you. If we really drag you down, you don't have to care about our lives. After all, this mission is very valuable and it's very important to the Academy and to us. We should work together to complete the mission. When the time comes, you'll also get a huge reward." Wan Yishui was very clear that she could not let Fatty fall out with the two of them. Although she hated Fatty, he was still the top student of the Academy of Dehua. He was also a genius that the dean and the pavilion master wanted to nurture. The Academy had treated her well, so how could she let things go on like this? That fatty probably didn't even know how he died. She didn't think that the fatty could defeat Xiao Mantian's Dao companion, who was a direct descendant of the Xiao family of the Star River King, a top expert on the same level as Daoist Jingxian. At the same time, the moment Wan Yishui started to speak, he completely released the aura of his green silk jade ripple technique. She knew very well that if she wanted to bury the hatchet, she had to display a strength that could make the other party think highly of her. At the same time, she had to make the other party believe that she had the ability to assist them and increase their combat strength. Furthermore, the Azure Strand's Emerald Ripple technique was not a form of coercion and was not restricted by the immortal light. It was just nice for the other party to feel it. Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei also revealed a slightly astonished expression and immediately became slightly intoxicated. However, it was only for an instant, and the two of them woke up from the concept of the Azure Silk Jade Ripple technique. "Are you done?" Xiao Mantian's eyes flashed with a trace of heat. For the first time, he looked at Wan Yishui and asked faintly, "I'm done. Brother Xiao, please be magnanimous." For the sake of completing the mission, for the sake of the academy, Wan Yishui had to lower her head. There was no other way. This world was a world where the strong were respected. Just based on the strength of the two of them, Wan Yishui had to lower her head. Furthermore, Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei also had a status that their academy couldn't afford to offend. At this time, the fatty only stared at Wan Yishui and didn't say anything. However, the aura released from his body was no longer concealed. Magnanimous? No one dares to provoke me, Xiao Mantian. If you want to let him go, you have to serve me well. If I'm satisfied, I can spare his life. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. Xiao Mantian stared at Wan Yishui, who wasn't as pretty as Feng Hanwei, but was more pleasing to the eye. The originally undetectable heat in his eyes became obvious. Even Chen Hao and Feng Hanwei could clearly feel Xiao Mantian's evil intentions, not to mention Wan Yishui, who was being stared at. Wan Yishui's face instantly turned red, and a trace of anger appeared on her face. She couldn't say anything else. "What? You're not willing? Brother Tian letting you serve him is your 100 lifetimes worth of good fortune." So many people offered themselves to Brother Tian, but Brother Tian didn't agree. "It's just a primordial yin body. The benefits you can obtain will be 100, 1,000 times greater." Xiao Mantian's partner Feng Hanwei actually said. Chen Hao, who wanted to see Wan Yishui's performance, was completely defeated by Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei's shamelessness and lowliness. Other than disdain in his heart, there was only disdain. Even though he knew that a crooked stick would have a crooked shadow, he didn't expect that a random direct descendant of the Xiao family would be so crooked. "Are you done?" Seeing Wan Yishui's face turn green and white, the fatty finally opened his mouth again. The same tone, the same arrogance, the same arrogance, the same arrogance, and the same arrogance as he spoke to Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei with his nostrils. Wan Yishui heard the fatty speak and wanted to stop him, but was stopped by the fatty's sharp gaze. "Haha." Xiao Mantian frowned again, and laughed out of anger. "I, Xiao Mantian, have never seen such a reckless thing like you. You, even the heavens won't be able to save you. Idiot." Feng Hanwei also said sternly to the fatty. She looked like she couldn't wait to crush the fatty to death. "Haha." Chen Hao suddenly laughed out loud. "I, Lord Fatty, have also never seen such an arrogant and reckless slut like you. Later, kneel in front of me, kowtow, and admit your mistakes. Also, if you serve Lord Fatty to my satisfaction, I can spare your dog lives." "Oh no, a slut like you, a slut, who knows, maybe 1,000 people will sleep with, 10,000 people will press down on you. Lord Fatty feels dirty, forget it, you only need to kowtow and lick my feet clean. Pay." As the fatty spoke, he spat a mouthful of saliva on his shoes. It had to be said that looking at Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei, who were obviously fuming with anger, Wan Yishui felt very relieved. At the same time, she had a new understanding of the fatty's shamelessness, arrogance, and supercilious. This was really a guy who was not afraid of anything, as if he didn't consider the consequences at all. Although the fatty was strong, could he really be stronger than Xiaoman Tian and his wife who were already famous? Taking a step back, even if the fatty was really stronger than the two of them, who would dare to touch them with their identity? They were the direct descendants of the Xiao family, the #1 power in the great world of Xiandi. Although she felt relieved, Wan Yishui knew that the fatty would be in big trouble this time, and she would not be able to escape. You are dead. Brother Tian, death is too easy for him. I want to cut him into pieces and refine his soul. Otherwise, I won't be satisfied. Okay, then I'll leave it to you. I'll deal with her. The two of them said coldly. Their tone was as if the fatty and Wan Yishui had become their meal. Still 019. That's all for today. Chapter 1300. Wan Yishui's delicate body trembled slightly. She knew that at this point, there was no way out. Moreover, she and the fatty were destined to be grasshoppers on the same boat. It was impossible for her to escape alone. No matter what, Wan Yishui did not expect such an outcome. She thought that this academy mission was a rare opportunity for her, but she did not expect such a thing to happen before the mission had even begun. Strange fatty? There was no need for that. Although the fatty was indeed a little impulsive, the main reason was that Xiaoman Tian and Feng Hanwei had gone too far. Moreover, Wan Yishui knew that even without the current conflict, she would not be able to escape from the evil claws of Xiaoman Tian, who had evil thoughts about her in the future cooperation. Buzz. After thinking for a moment, Wan Yishui suddenly enveloped the fatty with the aura of the blue wave green silk technique. The fatty was slightly taken aback, but soon understood Wan Yishui's meaning. After smiling slightly, he directly closed his eyes. At the same time, his face was brimming with a comfortable expression as he immersed himself in Wan Yishui's blue wave green silk illusion. Damn fatty, we're in deep trouble because of you. Don't talk. The moment the immortal light disappears, use all your strength to activate the great teleportation technique and take me away. I'll activate the blue wave green silk illusion with all my strength. It should be able to make them temporarily lose their minds. This may be our only chance to escape. I know you're very strong, but I'm afraid you don't understand how strong the Star River King's Xiao family is. Similarly, you don't understand the true strength of Xiaoman Tian and Feng Hanwei. If we lose, we'll die. If we win, we'll still die. We can only escape temporarily. After the mission is over, let the Dean resolve it, and we'll be truly free. Sure enough, as Chen Hao expected, just as he entered the illusion, Wan Yishui's voice sounded in his mind. Under the restriction of the immortal light, the two could not communicate telepathically. However, Wan Yishui could rely on the mystery of the blue wave green silk technique to communicate directly in the illusion. Boom. Chi 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 chi. Suddenly, just as Chen Hao was about to reply to Wan Yishui, the immortal light that was binding the four of them quickly shuttled through the void. What's going on? Chen Hao and Wan Yishui both looked at the void in shock. Xiaoman Tian and Feng Hanwei also looked at the sky. However, they didn't show too much surprise. It was as if everything was within their expectations. A faint shadow with a weak aura slowly emerged from the immortal light and took shape. Who else could it be but Dean Qingwanxiang? The two of you are indeed the elites of the Xiao clan. You can't even hide from this insignificant divine sense of the old man. Alright, since that's the case, the old man won't monitor you. However, I hope that the four of you don't fight amongst yourselves, and working together to complete the mission is the most important. After all, the intensity of the competition this time has exceeded old man's imagination. Even though Qingwanxiang was an expert at the true immortal king realm, the image condensed from a strand of his divine sense was extremely weak, and it was utterly unable to pose a threat to Xiaoman Tian and the others. Of course, this was necessary. Firstly, it was impossible to pass through the aura restriction of the secret realm if it was too strong. Secondly, none of the competing forces would allow anyone to sneak in with a powerful divine sense to help their disciples. Qingwanxiang had used this strand of his divine sense to sneak in with the four of them, and he was only monitoring their situation. Dean Cheng, I've said before that I don't want any monitoring when I'm on a mission. Even though I'm forcing your strand of divine sense to appear, what happened just now is real. It's impossible for us to work together. Wan Yishui can follow us, but tell the fatty to get lost. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless. Xiao Mantian said proudly. So this guy already guessed that the dean would be monitoring us with his divine sense? Chen Hao was slightly taken aback. There was a trace of imperceptible surprise in his eyes as he looked at Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei. Under normal circumstances, there weren't many arrogant geniuses that Chen Hao encountered who had brains or liked to use their brains. They were all overly confident and relied on their own strength. However, from Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei's expressions, it was obvious that the previous conflict had been deliberately orchestrated by them. There was only one goal, and that was to force Cheng Wanxiang to appear. Dean, I'll work with the fatty. Let's split up with them, Wan Yishui said hurriedly without hesitation. Just as Xiao Mantian had said, everything that had happened just now was real. How could Wan Yishui forget Xiao Mantian's burning gaze that was obviously filled with evil intentions towards him? What a joke! Do you think I'm afraid of you? If you want to get lost, then get lost. Otherwise, fatty! Cheng Wanxiang stopped Chen Hao and said, I originally wanted you to work together, and you should have been able to cooperate very well. Old man shouldn't have sent his strand of divine sense here. Don't say anything for now. While old man can still control the divine light, I'll split you into two groups and act separately. I hope you won't have any more conflicts in the secret realm. Everything can wait until the mission is over. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Following Cheng Wanxiang's words, the celestial light split into two. In the blink of an eye, the direction of the celestial light also changed. Fatty, remember, there's always someone better than you out there. If what you said before about not holding back is true, then you're definitely no match for Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei. Any one of them can defeat you. Both of them are almost invincible grand heavenly immortals, and they're even stronger when they work together. The aura you sensed is just that they've restrained a lot of their auras. Or rather, it might just be their lives. Buzz. Chen Hao, who was flying like a stream of light, was shocked as he thought about what Cheng Wanxiang had said to him through voice transmission. There's always someone better than you out there. As a person, you really have to think twice every day. While I think they're arrogant and condescending, don't they think the same of me? As for who's the real arrogant one, I'll only know after the battle. But this time, it seems that I've been too arrogant, Fatty thought to himself. Stepping into the great thousand worlds of the immortal emperors, entering a first-rate academy, becoming the valedictorian, winning countless praises, and being highly valued by the true martial pavilion and the great thousand worlds of the immortal emperors. Chen Hao's invincible belief and momentum had swelled abnormally, and he now despised the powerful geniuses of the great thousand worlds of the immortal emperors. But now, Cheng Wanxiang's words sounded an alarm for Chen Hao, blind, impulsive. The Xiao family, the direct descendant of the Xiao family of the Star River King, the famous foreign aide specially invited by the dean, the top expert of the great world of Xian Di, the Daoist Golden Wonderland. How can he be weak? I knew his identity, but I didn't even consider the 9 lives mystic technique. He hid his aura, but I thought he didn't. In other words, the aura he hid was enough to make me feel that he was very strong. He was very low-key, but he still gave me the impression of being high-profile. A self-deprecating smile appeared on Chen Hao's lips. All along, he had been low-key and still appeared high-profile to others. It couldn't be helped, his strength was too strong. But now, it was others' turn to face him, but he didn't know it himself. Today's update. Chapter 1301. The immortal light that bound Chen Hao and Wan Yishui's flight finally became weaker and slower. When it reached the time limit of 1 hour, it finally disappeared completely. Chen Hao, who had regained his freedom, stood up in the air, raised his head, and looked into the distance. He saw that the whole space was barren, with ravines crisscrossing the ground and collapsed mountains. A very clear aura of destruction bloomed from the ground, filling the whole space. If it were not for the clear ancient aura of death, One would think that a terrible natural disaster had just happened here. The energy between heaven and earth was extremely dense because of the collapse of the vast thousand domains, but it was much more chaotic than the primitive secret realm that Qianhao had been to before. Most of the spiritual qi of heaven and earth still contained the will of destruction. Qianhao took a deep breath, and the surrounding heaven and earth spirit qi immediately fluctuated along with his breathing. Directly swallow? Wan Yishui was slightly taken aback. Is there a problem? We were forcibly sent in by the true immortal king, and the destructive energy here is obviously still very dense. If we directly swallow it, it will be very troublesome, especially if we swallow too much. The destructive energy will gather more and more, and it is very likely that we will lose control. However, swallowing a little to comprehend the concept of destruction is not bad. Is that so? Nonsense. Do you think I would lie to you? Wan Yishui, who was destined to be with Qianhao for a period of time, did not want the conflict between the two to affect the mission. For the sake of the overall situation, she took the initiative to speak to the fatty enthusiastically. However, the fatty repeatedly asked questions, looking at her with eyes full of disbelief, or perhaps disdain. I don't know. However, I don't feel anything wrong, and it seems very comfortable. Suck. Qianhao said, and like a dragon sucking water, he activated his divine sense and opened his mouth to swallow. In an instant, the fluctuations of the surrounding energy of heaven and earth became even more intense. Wan Yishui shook her head and said nothing more. She opened her mind, sensing the subtle changes in the aura between heaven and earth, and said, "The core should be in this direction. Our mission is to obtain as many spiritual treasures of heaven and earth as possible, and we can't delay. My battle strength is not as good as yours, and I can only cooperate with you when I encounter a competitor. I hope you can let go of your prejudice, and we can cooperate well. After all, as long as we succeed, the benefits we can obtain will be huge, absolutely beyond our imagination." No problem. However, if we're talking about prejudices, aren't you the one who's prejudiced against me? I can no longer pursue the vulgar words you said to me before. Wan Yishui's face was slightly red as he frowned. She knew how precious this mission was, so she cherished this opportunity more than anyone else, even though her aptitude was relatively poor. She hoped to succeed. She hoped to obtain the final victory. That way, she would be able to obtain the commission of the entire Mystery Realm's profits. To her, this was extremely precious and needed. Therefore, no matter what, they had to give in to the shameless fatty and work together. What dirty words! I'm such a pure person. Do I look like someone who would talk dirty? You said earlier that you are inferior to me, fat bro. You are only assisting me. Therefore, the spiritual items of heaven and earth, legacy relics, and ancient magic treasures that we obtain together naturally have to be divided according to our contribution. I get 9%, you get 1%, no discussion. Is there a problem? Wan Yishui's mouth was crooked from anger. How could there be such a shameless and ungentlemanly man? You don't agree? Then let's split up and do our own things. Goodbye. Wait, I agree. Wan Yishui coughed up blood and surrendered. There were more than 3,000 forces and close to 10,000 competitors. Although her strength was definitely at the top among the 10,000 people, how could she fight against other people's teams alone? Perhaps in the early stages, but as she got closer to the core, she was afraid that she would become someone else's meal. You agree to this? Qianhao's figure froze, and he turned to look at Wan Yishui in surprise. The reason he was so shameless was because he didn't want to be alone with Wan Yishui all day long. There was no other way. Although he had become a fatty and wasn't handsome in the slightest, if a woman really came into contact with him, she would still be affected by his luck with women. Of course, Qianhao didn't intend to let Wan Yishui fend for herself. That wasn't his style. One more condition. Try your best to use the Azure Silk Jade Ripple technique on me, such as now. Okay. Wan Yishui gritted her teeth. After speaking, she directly used the highest level of the Azure Silk Jade Ripple technique on Qianhao. She really wanted to know whether the fatty wouldn't be charmed by her at the highest level of her emotions. So obedient, so comfortable. Let's go. What disappointed Wan Yishui was that the fatty only revealed a comfortable and intoxicated expression. His small eyes were as clear as before. With a step, he relied on his sharp soul perception to head in the direction of the denser energy of heaven and earth. This mission, no matter what, I have to take it. Improve my strength. Improve my Daoist golden wonderland to perfection. On the surface, Chen Hao didn't seem to be affected by Xiaoman Tian and his wife. He was still teasing Wan Yishui, but as he flew, his fighting spirit rose. After relaxing for a period of time, his nerves were once again in a tense state. Too slow. 2 days later, Chen Hao looked at Wan Yishui, who was chasing behind him with a red face and constantly widening the distance between them. He suddenly waved his hand, and an energy wrapped around Wan Yishui. In an instant, Wan Yishui felt as if the void was being torn apart, and the surrounding space had a strong change. Half a year in the outside world is probably a few decades, or even 100 years here. With your speed, you are delaying too much. Now, I will demonstrate the profound meaning of the great teleportation technique to you. Carefully comprehend it, don't worry about anything else. The fatty's voice resounded in Wan Yishui's mind, causing her to be a little stunned. Is this despicable, shameless, lowly, petty, and ungentlemanly fatty's brain cramping? Imparting the great teleportation technique to me? Wan Yishui simply couldn't believe it. But at this moment, she could clearly sense the profound aura of the fatty when he used the great teleportation technique. It was very obvious that the fatty had deliberately slowed down to demonstrate for her to comprehend. It was also at this moment that the mantra of the great teleportation technique also floated into Wan Yishui's mind. After Wan Yishui confirmed that she wasn't dreaming, she directly immersed herself in comprehending and cultivating. What's wrong, Brother Tian? Their speed suddenly increased by several times. Several times? Brother Tian, did you sense it wrongly? Wasn't their speed just now half of ours? If it's several times, then they have already surpassed our speed. In another direction, Xiaoman Tian and Feng Hanwei were shuttling through the void as fast as lightning. Chen Hao, Wan Yishui, and even Qing Wanxiang didn't expect or sense that Xiaoman Tian had actually left a mark on Wan Yishui's body. Damn, I uploaded it yesterday but forgot to post it. I just saw it. I'm really sorry. Chapter 1302. It's the great teleportation technique. I didn't expect that fatty to have cultivated the great teleportation technique to such a level. Xiaoman Tian closed his eyes, and a mysterious aura fluctuated between his eyebrows. After carefully sensing for 2 minutes, he suddenly opened his eyes. Brother Tian, what should we do? If that's the case, we won't be able to catch up. Don't worry, they won't be moving forward all the time. When they encounter something unusual, they will naturally stop. But we have to speed up so that we won't be delayed for too long. Buzz. Alright, buzz. The space between Xiaoman Tian and Feng Hanwei's brows suddenly emitted dense energy, and shortly after, their auras suddenly rose by more than twofold. In an instant, their flying speed doubled as well. If Chen Hao and Si Xian were here, they would definitely be able to sense that the aura released by the two of them was the aura of the 9 lives profound technique. The reason why the two of them were so concerned about the fatty and Wan Yishui was that the fatty had indeed angered the two of them previously. For cultivators, especially cultivators like them, any flaw in their hearts could become a restriction on their martial path. How could they let the fatty go? Secondly, Xiaoman Tian was very interested in Wan Yishui, especially her green jade ripple technique and her primordial yin body. Although they had only felt it for a moment, the refreshing feeling as if their souls had been cleansed left Xiaoman Tian and Si Xian wanting more. If they could obtain Wan Yishui's primordial yin body, they would be able to obtain the true essence of the green jade ripple technique through the fusion of yin and yang in a short period of time. More importantly, even if he couldn't comprehend it, he still had his cultivation partner, Feng Hanwei. No one knew how terrifying Feng Han Wei was. What a strong fluctuation. Could it be an or vein? Moreover, it should be an or vein that contains boundless spiritual qi of heaven and earth. It's very likely to be a pure celestial core crystal or vein. In the vast and boundless secret realm, Chen Hao and the others were separated by the immortal light at the beginning. But in this vast secret realm, they were still in the same area. It was just that they had to fly for several days or even dozens of days before they could meet. They were all moving forward by relying on their own perception of the aura of the secret realm. Naturally, they were all moving towards the core of the secret realm. Under such circumstances, the distance between them was bound to get closer and closer as they gathered towards the core. This was something that everyone understood. And now, many cultivators had sensed the sudden increase in the spirit qi of heaven and earth. Experienced cultivators could instantly make a rough judgment. Quick! Such a powerful aura must have covered a huge area. He believed that many other cultivators would have sensed it as well. Time was wealth. First come, first serve. Charge. Charge. A group of 4 with powerful auras suddenly increased their speed to the maximum. At the same time, the cultivators in the other dozens of places also went all out. To cultivators, the primitive secret realm was a huge treasure trove. Moreover, it was a treasure trove that was basically harmless. Of course, this referred to the primitive secret realm itself. Most of the danger came from competitors. Just as these teams were using all their strength to get closer and it would take them at least a few days or more to get there, 2 figures flashed in the void, as if they were crossing the void and finally stopped. Fuck. Both the fatty and Wan Yishui were stunned by the endless immortal light that was emitting from their bodies. Their aura alone had condensed into numerous dragon-shaped shadows that shot straight to the sky. It was a huge, sparkling mountain with a radius of 10,000 miles. It was a huge mountain that was purely made up of pieces of immortal core crystals. On the top of the mountain and in the surroundings was an expanse of disorder. Broken walls and ravines crisscrossed the surroundings. Needless to say, both of them knew that this was once an extremely wealthy sect, whereas this mountain of immortal origin crystals that lay across an area of 5,000 kilometers before them was undoubtedly a former storehouse. Unfortunately, the storehouse had collapsed, causing the boundless immortal origin crystals to be exposed. Immortal core crystals, so many immortal core crystals, my. Wan Yishui was so excited that he stuttered. Fuck, are you stupid? Hurry up and keep it. I'll give you 9 and you'll give me 1. Don't take too much. Swish. Chen Hao waved his hand, and numerous powerful runes floated out. In an instant, the wind swept away the clouds, and the endless immortal core crystals turned into long dragons that surged toward the space between Chen Hao's eyebrows. Can we take it? Can you take 1% or 1,000th of it? I'll give you 9, and I'll give you 1. Wan Yishui was completely speechless by the fatty's words. Moreover, the moment Wan Yishui recovered from his shock, he knew that many cultivators must have been here. They should be the disciples sent in by the experts who had discovered the secret realm in advance. However, no one could take away many of them, and perhaps only a hair from 9 oxen could be taken away. Cough, cough. Wan Yishui's words made Chen Hao cough awkwardly. He had actually forgotten that they were only in the Daoist Golden Wonderland. Although the Daoist Golden Wonderland already had a mental space, and the stronger the cultivator's strength, the larger the mental space would be, it was ultimately not the mental world of the Grand Mist Supremacy realm. Not everyone was as perverted as him. Fill it up, just fill it up. If you run out in the future, I can give you some more. However, you can just pretend that you didn't see the rest. As the fatty spoke, he did not stop collecting immortal core crystals at all. Moreover, as he spoke, what surprised Wan Yishui was that the fatty's body was still rapidly growing. In just a short sentence, he had already become more than 10,000 feet tall. The way he collected immortal core crystals was like a monster that could devour the heavens and the earth. For a moment, Wan Yishui even forgot to collect. He stared at the fatty in shock, feeling like he was an ant in front of him. Absorb. Buzz. Absorb, absorb, absorb. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The fatty frantically collected immortal core crystals. Wan Yishui finally understood why the fatty emphasized 9-1 and why he told him to pretend that he did not see it. What kind of monster was this damn fatty? Was he still human? Not to mention the Daoist Golden Wonderland, even the Supreme of Hongmeng, who had a mental world, might not be able to store so many immortal core crystals. Fatty, that, I'll help you collect them. Is it an obligation or a fee? If it's an obligation, it's fine. Wan Yishui resisted the urge to vomit blood and said, an obligation. But after we get out, you have to give me 1/10. 1% is fine too. Give it to me. What 1/10, 100th? You're treating me like an outsider. Who are we? Just collect as much as you can, no need to be polite. Damn fatty, can you not be so shameless? If I'm not wrong, the experts who came in with us will be here soon. That's true. Come on my shoulder. If you collect it, 1/10 is yours. I'll store it for you. He was obviously being treated as a coolie, but Wan Yishui agreed readily. In his opinion, it was already not easy for the stingy fatty to give such a condition. Chapter 1303. How could Wan Yishui not agree? This feeling was like the iron whip that had been used to whip him had now been replaced with a slap. His psychological bottom line had been raised by the shameless fatty. The current conditions were still very unfair, but Wan Yishui already felt that it was very, very good, at least, without the limitation of storage space, the 1/10 she collected would be many times more than her own. Absorb. Wan Yishui stood on the shoulder of the fatty who had turned into a towering giant. Like a dancing butterfly, she used all her skills to absorb the immortal core crystals at the fastest speed and sent them to Qinhao's glabella. She didn't know why the fatty's mind space was so abnormal. Although she was very curious, she didn't ask. Even if she asked, she wouldn't have an answer. But she had a new understanding of the fatty's abnormality. This was an unfathomable guy who couldn't be seen through at all. Swoosh. 4 days later, a stream of light flashed above the void and advanced at a terrifying speed. Anyone who saw it could be sure that this stream of light was using the 3000 Great Tao's lost art, the Great Teleportation Technique. At this moment, Wan Yishui was wrapped in the fatty's energy. Although it had been an hour since they left the mountain of immortal core crystals, her beautiful face still had a faint blush because of excitement. For days. In merely 4 days' time, they had actually uprooted the enormous mountain of immortal essence crystals and absorbed them all into the fatty's abnormal, bottomless space in his mind. Not even the dregs of the immortal essence crystals were left. They had collected them all. Fatty, you're really amazing. This time, we've made a big fortune. Wan Yishui couldn't suppress the excitement in her heart. It's just a little bit of immortal core crystals. What's there to be excited about? The fatty's face was obviously blooming with excitement, but he said it pretentiously. A little bit? It's 1/10 of what I collected. If it's just for cultivation, I won't be able to use it all in my lifetime. And for this mission, with these immortal core crystals, I'm afraid we'll be in an invincible position. It doesn't matter if your name is water, but don't have an empty head. What empty head? Only water enters when it's empty. You? Whose head is filled with water? Could it be me, fat bro? Firstly, I said that you should act as if you didn't see it. I don't want to expose the abnormality in the space in my mind. Secondly, if other people were to find out about such a huge amount of immortal origin crystals, including the Dean, do you think they would really let us monopolize it? Thirdly, you discovered this immortal elemental crystal mountain the moment you entered. Do you think you can be called a king in the primal mystic domain with just this bit of wealth? I was just saying. I didn't say that I would expose it. Cut the crap. Concentrate your mind and continue comprehending. I'll give you a year at most. I don't want to bring a burden along all the time. Wan Yishui's face suddenly turned red, but she didn't dare to refute, nor was she in the mood to refute. Fatty taught her the great teleportation technique and demonstrated it to her all the time. How could she refute? He could only be grateful. Furthermore, after interacting with him for the past few days, she realized that Fatty was only shameless with his words. In other words, his mouth was cheap, but his heart wasn't bad. Furthermore, Wan Yishui also realized that Fatty, who looked lewd and despicable, wasn't at all. Otherwise, even if Fatty didn't dare to mess around in the primal mystic domain with her, he would more or less show some of what he should have. However, he didn't. Even when he brought her along to fly, he used his energy to bind her, and not the simplest, most convenient and fastest way of holding hands. It disappeared. Someone must have beaten us to it. How could such a strong wave of energy disappear so quickly? There's no point in saying more. Let's hurry up and see what's going on. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. After Chen Hao and Wan Yishui collected all the immortal elemental crystals and left, none of the cultivators who had sensed the wave of energy from the immortal elemental crystal mountain had arrived. They didn't even know who had beaten them to it. However, Xiaoman Tian and Feng Hanwei, who had locked onto Chen Hao and Wan Yishui, sensed something. When Chen Hao and Wan Yishui stopped moving forward, they sensed it. When they madly approached and sensed the strong energy wave of the heavens and earth, they guessed that Chen Hao and Wan Yishui had stopped moving forward because of the energy wave. Not long after the energy wave gradually weakened and disappeared completely, Chen Hao and Wan Yishui suddenly moved forward again. They had sensed it as well. Therefore, others didn't know, but Xiaoman Tian was sure that Chen Hao and Wan Yishui had definitely benefited from it. However, Xiaoman Tian didn't know what Chen Hao and Wan Yishui had obtained for the time being. 2 days later, when some cultivators arrived successively, and they saw the broken walls, collapsed palaces, and other traces left behind by the ancient sects, and the aura left behind by the immortal essence crystal mountain that covered an area of 5,000 kilometers, everyone stared their eyes wide open with astonishment. Xiaoman Tian and Feng Hanwei were even more shocked. The distance from here when they sensed the aura, the strength of the aura they sensed at that time, and the location of the aura left behind now allowed Xiaoman Tian and the others to determine what this space was used for. They could also deduce that there must be a large amount of immortal elemental crystals stored here. But now, there wasn't even a single immortal elemental crystal left. The number of immortal elemental crystals that Xiaoman Tian and Feng Hanwei had determined made the two of them believe that the Fatty and Wan Yishui had obtained all of them. In their opinion, there should still be many cultivators here. It seems that many cultivators have already snuck in before us. This battle has become even more interesting. Let's go. The mark I left on Wan Yishui can only last for 2 months at most. We have to catch up to the two of them as soon as possible. 2 months? Brother Tian, isn't your tracking mark able to last for several years? That's in the great world of Xiandi. The destructive aura here is too strong. Even if my mark contains the immortal will, it can't last for long. 2 months is my limit. Then let's go quickly. Let's work together. Okay. In the chaotic space outside the secret realm, dozens of elders with powerful auras were gathered in the middle by thousands of elders with equally powerful auras. Everyone's eyes were filled with anticipation as they stared at the elder who was sitting cross-legged in the middle and continuously forming seals with his hands that emitted powerful space-time mysteries. After a full 10 minutes, the old man stopped with a slightly pale face. Elder Lu, did you deduce it? One of the dozens of elders with powerful auras asked. A very strong space-time law. Old man is unable to deduce the specifics. Even with the old man's understanding of the space-time law, he is unable to do it. However, I have already reached my limit. This means that the space-time law in the primitive secret realm is at least 1,000 times stronger than in the great world of Xiandi. What? Chapter 1304. How is this possible? Elder Lu, the great world of Xiandi is already the most powerful vast world. How can the primitive mystic realm have such powerful space-time laws? I'm not sure about that. However, in my opinion, this isn't the real primitive mystic region. In other words, This isn't formed after the collapse of the Great Thousand World. Instead, it's the person who was addressed as Elder Lu paused for a moment before he looked at the crowd. Instead, what? It's related to the Emperor's stars. The Emperor's stars. Everyone was stunned. In the chaotic space, this is the intersection of the 5 main stars. It's also a flight path. However, for hundreds of millions of years, no one has discovered its existence. Now, the Emperor's stars have just appeared, and we've discovered it. This is too much of a coincidence. That's one of the reasons. Secondly, Old Man can feel that although the space is filled with an endless amount of destructive aura, the space-time laws are very stable. It's as if the destructive aura is fused with the space-time laws. Elder Lu's words made everyone reveal a shocked and thoughtful expression. It's man-made. If the destructive aura is fused with the space-time profundity, there's only one explanation. This is a man-made primitive mystic realm. Otherwise, the destructive aura will definitely oppose any law in the primal mystic realm. This old man is not trying to scare you, but this mystic realm is very likely to have been created by a celestial emperor for his own awakening, and now all the disciples you sent in are very likely to become his stepping stones. Elder Lu's words shocked everyone. Elder Lu was one of the top experts in the great world of Xiandi who had the highest comprehension of the space-time laws. He had appeared here because he had been invited by the leaders of the various forces to deduce the space-time laws in the primitive mystic realm and deduce its value. There was no other way. No one present could simulate the same situation as the space-time laws in the primitive mystic realm. It was not possible even if they worked together. This was related to the highest level of comprehension. Therefore, if you don't want anything to happen to your disciples, it's best to call them back as soon as possible. Call them back. Elder Lu, that's impossible. When we entered, we worked together to set an automatic activation time on their tokens. We can't change it even if we want to, then we can only refine the command medallion and send someone to deliver it to them. Elder Lu frowned and said, "Of course, this is only old man speculation. As for the specifics, even I cannot predict it. It all depends on your decision." Elder Lu, thank you. At this moment, the dean of the top academy, Hogu Academy, cupped his fists and said to Elder Lu. Then he looked at the crowd and said, "I hope Elder Lu doesn't mind. This is only a secret realm that the Celestial Emperor created for himself. In my opinion, even if Elder Lu's speculation is correct, the person inside this secret realm can only be the reincarnation of the Celestial Emperor. Moreover, it must be the awakening of the Daoist Golden Wonderland. It's hard to say who will become whose stepping stone." The dean of Hogu Academy was very confident in his disciple. Even he couldn't see through the strength of Ding Hao, the young master of saber and sword. It was not an exaggeration to say that Ding Hao was invincible. So what if he was the reincarnation of an immortal emperor? Moreover, he already knew that the young master of saber and sword was hiding an even bigger secret. Of course, it's up to you whether to call your disciple out or not. However, if you decide to do so, it's equivalent to giving up the competition for this secret realm. I believe that no one has any objections to this, right? Of course not. No matter what you do, since our Cloud Sea Academy has participated, there's no reason for us to withdraw. We're determined to win this secret realm. There's no turning back. Our Dark North Academy won't withdraw. Our Dahua Academy won't withdraw either. Cheng Wanxiang said with great certainty. He was also not worried. After a while, the result came out. Unexpectedly, no one announced their withdrawal. On the contrary, some powerful forces were looking forward to it. Because if this secret realm was really as Elder Lu had speculated, it must contain the lifetime savings of an celestial emperor. What did that mean? Suddenly, a loud laugh tore through the sky without any warning, and it directly resounded in the ears of everyone present. It was as if it was right by their ears, and it caused everyone present to be astounded. Who could be so powerful? This was a chaotic space. Even if it was the most peaceful area, the spatial storms never stopped for a moment. However, this voice was actually able to appear by everyone's ears, yet they couldn't sense the slightest bit of the person's aura. After all, the people present here, and especially the few tens of people at the core, were all true immortal kings. How lively! I heard that a primitive secret realm of the Daoist Golden Wonderland has appeared here. The old man came uninvited. Everyone, please don't blame him. Haha. Space suddenly shook, and a dazzling spatial door actually directly appeared in the chaotic space. An old man walked out with a young man and woman. Everyone was shocked when they saw the old man. At the same time, they felt relieved in their hearts. No wonder he was so strong. When everyone saw the young man and woman on the left and right of the old man, their eyes lit up. The young man was delicate and handsome, and the young woman was extraordinarily beautiful. Just based on their appearance, they looked to be at most 17 or 18 years old. However, the natural aura that they emitted clearly told everyone present that they were at the consummate level of the Daoist Golden Wonderland. Senior Sword King, you must be joking. You being able to come is the glory of all of us. How could we dare to blame you? The dean of the Hogu Academy felt that his status was the highest, so he took a step forward and respectfully cupped his fists to the newcomer. What did you say? However, to everyone's surprise, when the newcomer heard the dean of the Hogu Academy's words, his expression actually changed. In an instant, his entire body seemed to have transformed into a peerless sword that existed eternally in the world. He emitted an extremely terrifying pressure, and even the true immortal kings present felt terrified. Strong. Absolutely strong. Senior Sword King, shut up. Old man once said that no one is allowed to call me Sword King. If you want to call me that, do it after I defeated Sword King Duguqiu. Senior Sword King Duguqiu disappeared millions of years ago. The current Sword King is none other than you. Moreover, in this one's opinion, your strength has definitely surpassed Sword King Duguqiu's. Ha, that's right. Old man's strength has indeed surpassed Duguqiu's, but it has surpassed the former Duguqiu. Now, who will win and who will lose will only be known after the battle. When the elder said this, he suddenly looked at the endless void. The sharp sword will around him shot up into the sky, as if the sky was about to be pierced through. His gaze seemed to pierce through the endless Milky Way and saw his opponent. However, in just an instant, the old man's aura suddenly disappeared as if nothing had happened. He looked at everyone again and said, "Old man came here to let my two disciples go in and gain experience. Don't worry, I won't participate in your competition. Is that all right?" Chapter 1305. Could there be a problem? If there was a problem, it could only become no problem. The great world of Xiandi recognized the new generation of Sword King Qiantaishu, second only to the Star River King, King Ying, and the other 8 true immortal kings from hundreds of millions of years ago. Who dared to have an opinion? In this world where strength was respected, strength was everything. Not to mention rules and laws, they were just shackles that restricted the weak. At Qiantaishu's level, it could be said that as long as he did not go against the top Celestial River King, Prince Ying and the others, he could completely ignore the rules. Moreover, the people present only felt a sense of helplessness when they felt the heavenly sword intent. His strength was not much worse than that of the Sword King, one of the 8 true immortal kings from hundreds of millions of years ago. It was even possible that he was stronger. Who dared to have an opinion? Of course. Everyone responded. That's good. Qin Yang, Miao Xian, after you go in, don't attack if you don't attack me. Understand? Yes, master. The Sword King, Qiantaishu, casually formed a sword with his finger and lightly slashed at the void in front of him. Immediately, the space was soundlessly cut open. The Sword King only needed to lightly point at the barrier that took more than 3,000 people to forcefully open. Of course, the Sword King only opened a small gap. Otherwise, it would be too terrifying. Go. Yes, master. The young man and woman called Qin Yang and Miao Xian suddenly shone brilliantly, as if they had turned into 2 swords, and disappeared in a flash. The aura that bloomed in an instant also shocked the masters present. They all prayed that their disciples would not have a conflict with these 2 people. More than 2,000 times the space-time law? The Sword King, Chen Taishu, looked surprised when he saw his two disciples disappear into the crack. The crack he opened with his sword finger instantly healed. How can it be so strong? Even the old man could not detect it? However, it annihilated the old man's sword intent so quickly. I'm afraid it's close to 3,000 times. When Elder Lu and the others heard the Sword King's words, they all widened their eyes in horror. Very good. Very good. The Imperial Star is not bad. It's within my expectations, but it's also outside of my expectations. Nothing is destined in this world. That's what makes it interesting. Unfortunately, this is the era of the young. Sword King seemed to be mumbling to himself. Then he disappeared without a trace, as if he had never been there. Senior brother, farewell. Within the secret realm, the beautiful young lady Miao Xian said to the young man Qin Yang as soon as she entered. All right, junior sister. Be careful. Since Master has deduced it, you must take it seriously. Senior brother, don't worry about it. You have to know that Master also said that nothing is predestined. What's more, when has Master's deduction ever come true? That's because you successfully changed your fate. Master also said that you might not be able to defy the heavens and succeed every time. Furthermore, he also emphasized that this will be the first great calamity in your life. I don't care if it's a tribulation or not. I just want to know who is destined to be my destined one. The young girl Miao Xian smiled indifferently. Then she turned into a stream of light with a swoosh. It was impossible to tell whether she was a person or a sword. There was only an astonishing speed. Qin Yang smiled bitterly and shook his head. He was helpless in the face of his stubborn and arrogant junior sister. Even Master didn't dare to say that he could transcend fate, let alone junior sister. What was heaven's secret? What was destiny? If it was deduced and changed fate didn't happen, did it really mean that it was a success? Perhaps, when you deduced and thought that you had successfully changed your fate, that would be your fate. Fate was unpredictable. Before reaching the immortal emperor realm, no one dared to say that they had seen through fate. No one could say that they had transcended the river of fate. Within the primitive secret realm, in the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Swoosh, swoosh. A figure flashed in the void at a terrifying speed like a bolt of lightning. Every time it flickered and appeared, there would be drops of bright red essence blood floating down from the void. It was a fat figure. I've been forced into such a situation. You two bitches, just you wait. As long as the space-time laws of this secret realm are strong enough, Chen Hao will deal with you. The combination of two bitches, 9 in 1. The two of them can actually use the 9 lives mystic technique to such a level. It's unbelievable. The fat man ran while comprehending the Dao marks contained in the wounds on his body. At the same time, he thought about Xiaoman Tian and Feng Hanwei's situation. Just as Chen Wanxiang had guessed, the current Chen Hao was utterly not a match for the joint forces of Xiaoman Tian and Feng Hanwei. Moreover, no matter what, Chen Hao had never expected that the two bitches would meet so quickly even though they had clearly separated in two different directions under the wrapping of the immortal light. It was fine if they met, but they actually attacked. If the two of them hadn't underestimated Chen Hao and underestimated Chen Hao's strength, Chen Hao and Wan Yishui would have been in trouble. However, what Chen Hao and Wan Yishui did not expect was that not long after the two of them had escaped and stopped to heal their wounds, they were actually found again. After 3 consecutive times, Chen Hao and Wan Yishui confirmed one thing, and that was that the other party was able to lock onto one of them. The time they had to catch their breaths was only because they had an advantage in speed. In other words, the other party had simply followed their footsteps and directly chased after them, not spending any time to find them. As for Xiaoman Tian and Feng Hanwei, they had actually cultivated the 9 lives profound technique to the pinnacle. Just this alone was already very shocking. What was even more shocking was that the two of them who had fused their 9 lives into one were actually able to create a new life, after fusing their swords together and completely fusing it with their life. Who knew how many times their battle strength had increased? If not for this, the fat man wouldn't be in such a sorry state. It was the first time someone had forced Chen Hao to such a state in the same realm. Fortunately, the other party was 2 as 1. Otherwise, Chen Hao's invincible momentum that had been formed over many years would have been destroyed. "How are you?" After the fat man confirmed that he was out of danger, his mind merged with his mind and asked, "I won't die yet?" "Fatty, thank you. If not for you, I might have already." "What are you thanking me for? What kind of relationship do we have? If you say that again, I'll get angry with you. But, if you really feel bad, then the immortal essence crystals will all right." "Fatty, put away your act. Aren't you purposely trying to disgust me? If you're afraid that I like you, you don't have to deliberately pretend. Besides, am I that annoying? Also, you're just a little more talented. Being so fat and ugly doesn't suit my aesthetic standards. What's more, you have a Dao companion." "Fuck, Sister Shui, how can you be so hypocritical?" The fat man couldn't take it anymore. Although he knew that Wan Yishui had seen through his thoughts, but she couldn't say that he was fat and ugly, right? "No way. I'm just speaking the truth. But I'll heal first." Under the protection of Chen Hao, although Wan Yishui's injuries were lighter, her endurance was a few streets below the fat man's. Chapter 1306. Due to Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei's pursuit, Chen Hao had no choice but to expose the space in his sea of consciousness. In order to save Wan Yishui and save his own life, Chen Hao had exposed the space in his sea of consciousness, which was comparable to a Grand Mist Venerable Expert's sea of consciousness. Wan Yishui was sure that the size of the fatty's mental space was much larger than the mental worlds of the Grand Mist Supremacy realm, and it had the ability to enter a living person's mental space. In fact, Wan Yishui couldn't feel the difference between Chen Hao's mental space and the mental space of a great world, but Chen Hao was only in the Daoist Golden Wonderland, and the prototype of his great world hadn't taken shape yet, so it was impossible for him to have a mental world. After a short period of contact, Wan Yishui's view of the fatty had changed greatly. At least, her disgust and hostility no longer existed. If it wasn't for the fatty, or if the fatty didn't help her with all his strength, she might have already been killed by Xiao Mantian. How could a person who didn't care about his own safety when his life was in serious danger and saved her, who wasn't even a friend to him, be a wretched and shameless person? Wan Yishui didn't believe it. Moreover, he was obviously very lecherous on the surface, but in this period of contact, he didn't do anything improper to her at all. It was also because she saw through some things that Wan Yishui said those words just now. The space-time law here should be very strong. Half a year in the outside world is at least 10 years here? Chen Hao slowly landed in a hidden valley and sat down cross-legged, thinking to himself. Unfortunately, he only had a superficial understanding of the space-time law and couldn't deduce the specific situation at all. He only felt that it was very strong. This feeling was like the feeling of an ant looking at a human and an elephant. There was no difference. I can't just complete the mission for the sake of completing it. Otherwise, in the end, I'm afraid it will still be a wedding dress for someone else. Experience. The dean also said that this is a rare opportunity for Wan Yishui and me to gain experience. I'll cultivate here for a while. As long as the space-time law is strong enough, I'll trample on you. Chen Hao's eyes flashed with a sharp light, and he suddenly attacked. Chi 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 chi. Mysterious runes spread out in all directions in an instant, as if they had merged with the world and disappeared in an instant. However, Chen Hao did not have the slightest intention of stopping. After an hour, his expression became a little ugly, and he finally stopped. Phew. With the protection of this barrier and the fact that Wan Yishui is in my mind, they shouldn't be able to sense our location. Moreover, even if they chase after us, I will be able to discover them at the first moment. If we can't fight them, escaping won't be a problem. Chen Hao and Wan Yishui had already checked their own bodies, but they did not find that their bodies had been tampered with. Of course, Chen Hao could not find it. He did not have it on his body at all. Now, Wan Yishui had entered Chen Hao's mind space. Other people's mind space and even their mind world were fine, but Chen Hao's mind space could shield abilities that far exceeded his realm. This was all thanks to the old god's protection. It was also because of this that Xiao Mantian and his wife, who had been left far behind, were puzzled. Because Xiao Mantian's senses had already lost Wan Yishui's aura, they had no choice but to give up the chase. There was no other way. In the vast and boundless space of the secret realm, it was already difficult to catch up to two people who were faster than them, not to mention that they had become headless flies. Of course, Chen Hao and Wan Yishui did not know this. After informing Wan Yishui, Chen Hao immersed himself in cultivation for the first time since stepping into the primitive secret realm. Moreover, he wanted to squeeze and force himself to cultivate. Buzz. The moment his mind and mind connected, Chen Hao's heart and mouth became one, and at the same time, an extremely mysterious and unfathomable general principle of the great Tao sounded. Chi-chi-chi. In an instant, a large number of celestial origin crystals rose up and circled around him. They shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye and turned into pure spiritual qi of heaven and earth, which was absorbed and refined by Chen Hao. Refining his meridians, refining his dantian, refining every cell in his body, refining his mind space, everything was done at the same time. Under the threat and pressure of Xiao Mantian's life and death, Chen Hao, whose state of mind had already become invincible, seemed to have returned to the time when he was suppressed to the point that he could not breathe. Once again, he started to squeeze himself to his limits. Boom, 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 boom. After the celestial origin crystals overflowed from Chen Hao's sea of consciousness, they could not even last for an hour before they exploded. However, not a single strand of energy could escape. Under the restraint of Chen Hao's powerful mind, they all fused into his body. As time passed, Chen Hao's fat body started to inflate like a balloon, becoming bigger and bigger. From time to time, a part of his body would explode, and blood and flesh would splatter everywhere. However, in an instant, it would be forcefully sealed by runes, and the expansion continued. However, this was only the most superficial situation. In Chen Hao's mind space, other than the pure land that was sealed for the all-purpose water, the entire mind space of Chen Hao had sunk into a terrifying energy storm. Countless immortal origin crystals exploded and filled the entire mind space. However, in an instant, they would mysteriously disappear. This made Chen Hao, who was immersed in a state of crazy cultivation, feel inexplicably surprised. He felt a little heartache for the consumption of immortal origin crystals, but more than that, he was excited. An uncontrollable excitement. After the nirvana of the true self, the old god had completely disappeared from Chen Hao's world. When he came to the great world of Xiandi, Chen Hao's mind space no longer had any life. It was an empty and dead world, but now, a change had occurred. Chen Hao could clearly feel that everything originated from the deepest part of his mind space. Furthermore, a faint, weak, but real aura that belonged to the old god quietly grew in the depths of Chen Hao's mind space. Although it was very weak, it could not escape Chen Hao's perception. How could Chen Hao forget that familiar aura? As he grew up, step by step, without him, it could be said that there would be no Chen Hao today. Old god, Chen Hao's heart, which had been tempered to be as tough as iron, was uncontrollably excited and trembling at this moment. Even after the aura of the old god appeared, it was difficult to maintain the state of cultivation. If not for the fact that he was worried that stopping cultivation would affect the change in his mind, Chen Hao really wanted to stop and integrate himself into the faint and weak aura of the old god. Resisting the excitement in his heart, Chen Hao raised the speed and sound of reciting the outline of the great Tao to the fastest and strongest. 1 day passed. 2 days passed, 10 days passed. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed. More than half of the huge mountain of immortal origin crystals had been devoured, but the change in Chen Hao's mind still showed no signs of stopping. But what was worth being happy about was that the aura of the old god had become much stronger. Moreover, there was also a seemingly strong and excited fluctuation. Chapter 1307. Old God. A wisp of Chen Hao's heart floated in the deepest part of his mind. The aura of the old god was gradually getting stronger, and the emotions that were gradually surging out of it had already made Chen Hao certain that the old god was about to wake up. Thinking of all the things that had happened in the past, Chen Hao was very excited. During the days when the old god was not around, Chen Hao deliberately did not think of it and deliberately suppressed it. Just like how he missed the girls, it did not easily appear in Chen Hao's mind. On the road to the peak of martial arts, one was destined to endure unbearable loneliness and loneliness. This was something that Chen Hao had already realized when he decided to set foot on the great world of Xiandi alone. When the old god collapsed and fell into nirvana, he did not know what the old god had done for him, but he knew that the reason he could wake up so quickly, enter the Milky Way star area, and succeed in reincarnation so quickly was definitely due to the old god. Unfortunately, when he succeeded in nirvana, he could no longer sense the old god's aura. The aura of the Milky Way tunnel in the vast thousand chaotic world was the only remaining aura of the old god. Chen Hao had always thought that it might be the place where the old god was. No matter what, when he was strong enough, he had to go back and take a look. However, all this time, Chen Hao had not really cared, because in the depths of his mind, he did not think that the old god would die. Subconsciously, he firmly believed that the old god would return one day. Now, the old god's aura finally appeared again. Boom, boom, boom. Countless immortal core crystals were still exploding, and the released heaven and earth spiritual chi did not stop at all and disappeared strangely. As time passed, the old god's aura became stronger and stronger. Finally, after a full year, when the mountain of immortal core crystals that Chen Hao had obtained was almost used up, Master, the familiar voice of the old god floated directly in the depths of Chen Hao's mind. Old god, you're finally awake. Master, I woke up before you woke up. However, when you reincarnated into your true self, I had no choice but to follow you into nirvana. Old god's voice was very clear, but it was still very weak. Follow me to nirvana? What do you mean? When you reincarnated and underwent nirvana, it was like starting from scratch. Whether it was your soul or the space in your mind, it was a process of condensing from nothing. If I did nothing in your mind, it would definitely affect you and even cause the nirvana of your true self to fail. At that time, I could either leave you and wait for you to succeed in your nirvana before entering your mind, or I could undergo nirvana with you and start from scratch. I chose to undergo nirvana with you. You're going to undergo nirvana with me? Chen Hao asked in surprise. Yes, Master. After the nirvana of my true self, I woke up earlier than you, Master. However, I need to absorb too much energy to come out of the nirvana of my true self. I only dare to start when your energy meets my requirements. Otherwise, once I start, I won't be able to stop. If I don't have enough energy, I'll fail. I thought it would take a long time. I didn't expect Master to obtain such a huge amount of supreme-grade celestial origin crystals. Damn. Old God, don't tell me you won't leave me with this little bit? Although Chen Hao was happy, when he heard the old god say that the celestial origin crystals were still lacking, his heart ached. That was a huge amount of wealth. A mountain of celestial origin crystals. As Wan Yishui said, it was enough for her to use for a lifetime. Although he had used up more than half of it, the remaining little bit was still a huge number for Chen Hao. It was still very useful. But the old god's appetite was too fucking exaggerated. I really can't leave it. Not only can I not leave it, I'm afraid you'll have to frantically devour the energy of heaven and earth to help me, and that I'll borrow the celestial origin crystals that little girl Wan Yishui collected in her mind. Chen Hao was speechless. Master, do you have the heart to see me unable to truly awaken? Where in the world can you find a super refiner and alchemist like me? Before my true self underwent nirvana, my original body could transform into 100 different forms and be used by Master. Now that it has successfully undergone nirvana, how strong will it be? Also, in this world, who can cooperate better than me with Master? My realm is always one level higher than Master's, just a little bit more powerful. As long as Master and I fuse further, the increase in strength will be very, very significant. At least, I feel that after we fuse, if we meet that pair of bitches Xiaoman Tian and Feng Hanwei again, we definitely won't have to run. In fact, we can trample on them however we want. Oh, right, Master, I've awakened a lot of memories. There are memories of the previous master, the previous master, the previous master, the previous master, and the previous master. Stop. Chen Hao was speechless and stopped the old god from continuing. He finally realized that the old god had become as shameless as Master Fatty after his true self had undergone nirvana. Moreover, from the old god's words, it was obvious that he was well aware of Chen Hao's experiences during this period of time. In short, Master, every time I realize that I'm not that great, I'll realize that I've underestimated myself. Now, I finally understand that I should be the legendary Gao Qi, whose memories and cultivation have been sealed. As Master improves, I'll improve automatically. Moreover, there's a very, very important point. Stop! Old God, first, principles are still principles, and they remain unchanged. Second, no matter how much you use, you have to make up for it. Treasure Hunter is still there, right? Of course, but it can't appear for the time being. I can only summon it after I've completely undergone nirvana. That's fine. Continue to swallow. Buzz. Chen Hao's mind moved, and a strand of divine thought floated into the only pure land in his mind that was sealed off. At this moment, Wan Yishui was sitting cross-legged. Her brows were slightly furrowed, and her delicate body was trembling non-stop. Her entire body was drenched in cold sweat, and runes were flickering on the wound on her chest. Even now, it was still emitting a sharp aura. This was the Dao mark left behind by Xiaoman Tian and Feng Hanwei. It had already been a whole year, but Wan Yishui still hadn't gotten rid of it. From this, it could be seen how high Xiaoman Tian and Feng Hanwei's comprehension of the heavenly Dao was. It's been a year, Sister Shui, do you really not need any help? Chen Hao's voice once again resounded in Wan Yishui's mind. In the past year, although Chen Hao was immersed in a state of madness, Wan Yishui's every move couldn't escape his senses. He had offered to help many times, but the other party didn't agree. She insisted that he get rid of Chen Hao's Dao mark. This also made Chen Hao increasingly aware of this girl's stubbornness. Chapter 1308. No need. Wan Yishui said. Although self-healing was a little painful, it was a rare cultivation opportunity for cultivators. However, this was for Dao marks whose cultivation realm was slightly higher than the injured person. If the difference was too great, it would be a kind of torture, and Wan Yishui's current situation was more or less torture. She really did not want to use this method to cultivate, but the strange thing was that the place where she was injured was too sensitive. Her chest. Although she knew that the fatty was not a real lecherous person, asking the fatty to help heal her would inevitably touch the wound. How could Wan Yishui, who still maintained her primordial yin body, be embarrassed? You really don't need it? Isn't it just your chest? What kind of boobs have I not seen before? Just this little bun of yours is not enough for me to look at. No need. Fatty, don't talk nonsense. Wan Yishui said with a red face. She cursed the fatty in her heart for being shameless. Although she did not understand the terms the fatty used, she could understand the fatty's meaning. However, you don't need my help, but I need your help. You need my help? Wan Yishui was slightly puzzled. That's right, take out all the immortal essence crystals you collected. Let me see. What for? Wan Yishui said vigilantly. Don't be nervous. Do you think I care about your little bit of immortal essence crystals? I just found something and need you to take it out to verify. What did you find? Take it out and you will naturally understand. Hurry up, don't delay my cultivation. All right, don't even be greedy for this little bit of mine. Wan Yishui looked at the fatty who had transformed with her mind. She felt that there was a conspiracy, but she could not think of what the fatty could do. After all, he already had a mountain of immortal essence crystals. There was no need to be greedy for the little bit she collected, right? Wan Yishui's glabella shone brightly, and immortal essence crystals gushed out. Strange. How could it be? Quick, take it out for me to see. The fatty waved his hand and the immortal essence crystals floated in front of him. His eyes were filled with doubt, as if he was talking to himself. At the same time, he urged Wan Yishui to take them out. Wan Yishui's curiosity was also aroused by the fatty, but she could not see what was wrong with the immortal essence crystals. What was the fatty curious about? Why are they all fine? Are they all trash that stumped me? Yours is the real one. Hurry up, Sister Shui, hurry up, take them all out. Fatty shook his head. Fatty, why can't I see anything unusual? Everything I've collected is abnormal, but yours is indeed not. Hurry up, what's wrong with you? We'll talk about it after I finish reading it. The strand of Old God's mind was speechless as he looked at his master's mind incarnation who had disguised his appearance. Although Old God knew everything about Chen Hao, it was too much for him to be so vulgar, especially to a little girl. We can start now. When Wan Yishui took out all his immortal essence crystals, Chen Hao's voice echoed in the Old God's mind. Rumble. Rumble. Sympathy was sympathy, but Old God did not hesitate at all. He immediately carried out Chen Hao's orders. There was no other way. His nirvana of true self was different from Chen Hao's nirvana of true self. If he wanted to succeed, he had to devour endless energy. Two screams were heard. My immortal essence crystals. Fatty, what's going on? So it's the same as mine. The fatty's face was full of shock. He said shamelessly, Sister Shui, there's something wrong with these immortal essence crystals. Look, the mountain of immortal essence crystals that I collected is also gone. It also exploded like this, but there's no energy left behind. Buzz? Fatty directly connected with Wan Yishui's mind. A gentleman is magnanimous. Wan Yishui, on the other hand, widened his eyes and mouth in shock. Even though he had long known that the fatty's mental space had the ability similar to the mental world and was incomparably huge, when his mind truly merged with the fatty's mind into the entire mental world, the shock it brought to Wan Yishui was still incomparably huge. For a moment, he even forgot that his immortal essence crystals had exploded and disappeared. Sigh, I was happy for nothing. These immortal essence crystals are probably too old. They only have the shape and meaning, but they don't really have the original spiritual energy of heaven and earth. You integrated into your great world? As soon as Chen Hao finished speaking, Wan Yishui, who had woken up, asked directly. How could? Do you think I'm stupid? Damn fatty. In this year, I used a lot of energy to heal myself, and I relied on them to support me. Every one of them is a real top-grade immortal essence crystal. Not good. Someone's coming. Sister Shui, you continue, I'll go out and take a look. The shameless fatty directly left. Wan Yishui was so angry that he stomped his feet, but he could only accept it. Phew. Chen Hao's mood was relaxed as he completely withdrew from the state of cultivation. Of course, he knew that Wan Yishui was not so easy to fool. The reason why he did this was to find an excuse for him to directly ask to borrow immortal essence crystals. How embarrassing would that be? Another point was to force Wan Yishui to make a certain decision. Sometimes, it was necessary to use force on this stubborn girl. Otherwise, they would continue to persist in meaningless or meaningless things. Chen Hao felt the surging power in his body. He knew that although this year had helped the old god recover to the greatest extent, under the refinement of the primary instruction of the great Tao and a large number of immortal essence crystals, his strength had also improved greatly. My true origin and physical strength have increased by at least 20%, but I still don't feel full. Boom! Chen Hao casually threw a punch, and the boundary that had been formed a year ago was directly turned into ashes. It's meaningless to continue refining. I must have the corresponding comprehension to improve. Nearly 3,000 times, half a year is nearly 1,500 years, Chen Hao murmured. From the old god, Chen Hao had learned that the space-time law of this secret realm space was about 3,000 times that of the great world of Xiandi. If the old god had not solemnly said that this was based on the awakened space-time law, Chen Hao would not have believed it at all. After all, the great world of Xiandi could be said to be the most powerful vast thousand realms that Chen Hao knew. How could the primitive secret realms surpass it by so much? However, the conclusion that the old god had deduced from the experience of the Emperor's Star later resolved Chen Hao's doubts. Damn fatty! Sure enough, as Chen Hao expected, Wan Yishui's voice appeared in his mind not long after. Help me heal. Okay. You can't peek and you can't take advantage of me. I've said it before, I'm not interested in small steamed buns. But you mean I can do it openly? Chapter 1309. Chen Hao directly released Wan Yishui from the space in his mind. With a harmless smile on his face, he stared at Wan Yishui, who had a face full of anger and helplessness. Despicable, shameless, vulgar, evil, sinister, and cunning. This was Wan Yishui's deepest feeling. However, without the energy support of the supreme-grade celestial origin crystal, Wan Yishui would not be able to resist Xiao Mantian's powerful Dao mark for long, let alone comprehend it. Therefore, she could only choose to let the fatty help her to break the Dao mark and completely heal her. And this was all because of the shameless fatty. If you weren't shameless, we would still be friends. Wan Yishui glared at the fatty angrily for half a minute before she finally choked out a sentence. But this sentence made the fatty spit out. Sister Shui, get ready. Focus your mind, get rid of all distracting thoughts, and sense carefully. Don't think about Ruo Feifei. Chen Hao laughed and released waves of energy, immediately binding Wan Yishui. They sat cross-legged facing each other. At the same time, what made Wan Yishui's face turn red was that Chen Hao's right hand contained endless mysterious runes, and he slapped her full right breast. Wan Yishui wanted to dodge and stop, but the fatty's powerful binding had predicted all of this, making her unable to resist at all. The only thing she could do was to bite her lips and close her eyes. Since you can't resist, just enjoy it obediently. The fatty's damnable voice made Wan Yishui feel ashamed. She wished she could find a hole to hide in, and she regretted letting the fatty do it. But now, she had no way out. Buzz. The sudden high-frequency vibration from her soft breasts made Wan Yishui's entire body go numb. However, what made her slightly relieved was that the fatty's seemingly wretched claws did not directly press on her soft breasts. Instead, endless mysterious runes were sent out through the air, as if they had condensed into tentacles. It's just a joke. Why are you so nervous? Wang Zai, little man too, I'm really not interested. Hurry up, focus your mind. I'll help you comprehend it. Just treat it as compensation with your celestial origin crystal. The fatty said without restraint, but against his will. Wang Zai Xiaomantu? If Wan Yishui's twin peaks were also called small steamed buns, then there wouldn't be many women in the world who could be called big steamed buns. Although he did not touch it with his own hands, the sensation of his tentacles was no less than real hands. It was full, round, and firm. It could definitely be considered a perfect chest shape. Even if Fatty did not have any improper thoughts at this moment, out of the most normal reaction of a man, he would still have a certain feeling. Especially when he thought about what the old god had said. He and Wan Yishui were going to spend more than 1,000 years together. He couldn't do it for real. Could he just let his imagination run wild? There's nothing wrong with fantasizing. However, in just a moment, Chen Hao's mind had completely regained its clarity and had temporarily fused with Wan Yishui's mind, allowing Wan Yishui to clearly sense how he had broken the Dao marks left behind by Xiao Mantian. Even though Chen Hao did not want to admit it, he had to admit that the Dao marks that Xiao Mantian had left behind were difficult for him to do. Now that he could easily break through them, it was because he was already familiar with the Dao marks. Otherwise, even for him, it would take him several days of comprehension before he could decipher it. Right when Chen Hao was healing Wan Yishui, 4 figures suddenly flew over from the sky. 2 men and 2 women. Obviously, they were from the same power. There are actually people healing? Their auras seem rather strong. They are from the Dahua Academy. After they saw Chen Hao and Wan Yishui's appearances, the 4 of them immediately confirmed Chen Hao and Wan Yishui's identities. Before they stepped foot into the primal secret realm, they could easily remember the 10,000+ disciples of the 3,000+ powers with a single glance. There are only 2 of them. Those 2 powerful external aids aren't here. If all 4 of them were here, then we could only hide. As for the 2 of them, we can't hold back. What do you think? Of course, not to mention that they are still healing. We wasted an entire year in order to avoid the ocean of Cloud's Academy. They are injured, and I presume they are from fighting for treasures. Moreover, with their strength, they should have gained quite a bit in a year, right? That's for sure. The heavens are helping us. Let's go. The 2 men and 2 women had a trace of excitement on their faces as they landed beside Chen Hao and Wan Yishui. Chen Hao and Wan Yishui sensed the 4 of them the moment they appeared in the void. Moreover, they opened their eyes. However, they were at a critical juncture in their recovery. If they gave up now, it would be equivalent to wasting all their previous efforts. Unless it was necessary, Chen Hao was naturally unwilling to give up. Moreover, what made Wan Yishui slightly surprised was that the fatty who seemed to be very relaxed earlier suddenly became unwell the moment the 4 of them appeared. His fat face was covered in cold sweat, and he was terrifyingly pale. His chubby body was trembling slightly, as if he had exhausted too much energy, or the Dao marks on Wan Yishui's body were too strong. However, in just an instant, Wan Yishui thought of what the wretched fatty was up to. Therefore, before the fatty could remind her, the intelligent Wan Yishui instantly became unwell. Her pretty face was flushed red, as if she was in a half-awake state due to her heavy injuries. The leader's cultivation was obviously the highest, and he was also the core disciple of the 4. After he slowly landed beside the 2 of them, he chuckled. His gaze swept past the fatty and Wan Yishui, and finally landed on Wan Yishui's face. Especially when he saw the fatty stretch out his hand to help Wan Yishui heal, his gaze paused slightly on Wan Yishui's full and round breasts, shining with a gaze that a man should have. However, it quickly disappeared. This Dao mark's chi is so profound, the person who injured you must be very powerful, right? Brother, what do you want to do? The fatty's gaze locked onto the other party, and his voice trembled slightly as he asked in pain. What do you think? The leader smiled and turned to look at Chen Hao. His gaze was filled with a sense of ridicule. We are currently healing. I hope you don't mess around. Fatty, you're not stupid? Before we came, I heard that you were the chief student of Dahua Academy, and you even defeated Yun Tian? I couldn't tell at all, but your luck seems to be pretty good. Another person's gaze seemed to be a little blatant as he glanced at Wan Yishui's body. Primordial Yin body. Furthermore, she was a genius female disciple of Dahua Academy. In this primal secret realm competition, it was destined to be a competition without any rules. No matter what they did, it was within the rules. No one could control them, and they would not be restricted by any laws. Since they were going to kill and steal, wouldn't it be a pity to waste the primordial Yin body of a genius? Chapter 13:10. Cut the crap. Hand over everything you have and we can give you a quick death. One of the female disciples frowned and said coldly when she saw the perverted look in the young man's eyes. How can we do that? It's still a waste. Junior brother Wu Peng, shut up. You have to have a bottom line. In a competition, the strong are respected, but you can kill but not humiliate. Fatty Wan Yishui, right? Hand over everything and pay a level of cultivation and we can let you live. The leader winked at the other young man and said, Senior brother Lin Tao is right. Alright, hand it over now. You want to mess around? Although the fatty still looked like he was in pain, his voice was no longer trembling. His already small eyes narrowed into a slit as he looked at the four of them. "If you don't want to die, be quick," the lady said coldly. "Hand over everything and pay a level of cultivation and you will let us go?" The fatty seemed to be intimidated by the other party's aura and frowned. "Promise not to touch her?" "Do you have a choice?" "Cut the crap. I will count to 3. The two of you, open up your mind space or die." Chi 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 chi. Following the leader's words, the four of them surrounded Xianxia and Wan Yishui. At the same time, they released extremely powerful pressure, which pressed down on Xianxia and Wan Yishui. Their bodies bent at the same time and blood flowed from the corners of their mouths. Wan Yishui was indeed not faking it, but she knew that the fatty was definitely not real. She was very clear about how strong the fatty's ability to withstand pressure was. This bit of pressure, even she could withstand it when she was not injured, let alone the abnormal fatty. Similarly, Wan Yishui was not at all worried that the four of them would be a threat to them. In the entire primitive secret realm, only the top Shaoman Tian and a few others could threaten the perverted fatty. The rest were simply asking for death. The leader was very satisfied with everyone's cooperation. The fatty and Wan Yishui's performance was also within his expectations. At this moment, in his eyes, the two of them were already prey in his hands. Whether they killed them or cut them off, they were all firmly in his hands. 2. He slowly extended his hand and the mysterious and powerful laws of the Abhijna started to gather. 3. However, what surprised the leader was that his divine power law had not been condensed yet. He had just shouted 2, but someone had shouted 3. 2. There was no time for him to think. Similarly, the other 3 didn't have time to think. An incomparably sharp sword light suddenly appeared in their eyes at the same time, rapidly enlarging. He didn't have time to react because this sword light was truly too swift. What was even stranger was that it didn't contain any divine ability or laws, nor did it contain any energy. It was soundless like a venomous snake flicking its tongue, and it seemed to step on the pulse of the heavens and the earth and the circulation of all things as it flashed past. In their eyes, the heavens and earth dimmed, leaving only the incomparably sharp sword light. Wan Yishui's eyes widened. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. A sword without any energy or divine ability laws had directly wiped out 4 heads that had been alive just a moment ago. The 4 heads were still rolling on the ground with their eyes wide open. The 4 headless bodies had their blood essence soaring into the sky. Impossible! Impossible! Close it up. But I'm going to kill you. Fuck! Shameless, how dare you launch a sneak attack? After a short period of pain and shock, the 4 primordial spirits directly controlled the heads and bodies to fly up, and at the same time, they cursed at Xianxia. However, the fat man who was sitting cross-legged didn't even stand up. His sword fingers turned into numerous afterimages in the void. In an instant, the whole world was filled with sharp sword light that contained monstrous killing intent. Boom, 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 boom. The 4 heads and the headless bodies didn't even have time to unite before they were turned into minced meat in the endless sword light. The moment the heads exploded, countless things spilled out. Obviously, that was the result of the primordial spirits not having time to completely separate, and the explosions continued. However, whether it was the spiritual items of heaven and earth, immortal origin crystals, or the energy contained in their bodies at this time, they were all bound by invisible tentacles and directly entered between the fat man's eyebrows. Devour! What do you want to do? The 4 primordial spirits, bound by the irresistible tentacles, floated in front of Xianxia, extremely terrified. What do I want to do? Ha! What do you think I want to do? The fat man, with a harmless smile on his face, glanced at the 4 primordial spirits and asked in return. Sorry, we were wrong before. Please let us go. Sorry? Let you go? Damn you, your words are better than a song. If I were really weak, would you let me go? Even she would be humiliated to death by you, right? The fat on Xianxia's face trembled. He stood up and pointed at the nose of the person who spoke and scolded. Although they were only primordial spirits, in the Daoist Golden Wonderland, especially for geniuses like them, their primordial spirits were relatively solid. No, it won't. Don't fucking talk nonsense with me. What else do you have in your mind? Call them all out. No, directly open up the space in your mind, or die. I'll count to 3. I'll give 2. Please let me go. No matter what request you have, I'll agree to it. As long as you don't kill me, the woman said with a touch of fervor in her eyes. I'll be at your disposal. Bitch, she's 10,000 times prettier than you. Don't fucking disgust me. The fatty said disdainfully. At the same time, 4 spiritual tentacles suddenly came out from between his eyebrows and instantly entered the other party's mind. Originally, the 4 of them thought that he was just going to rob them of their belongings, but a moment later, the 4 of them collapsed to the ground in shock. Not only was their mind emptied, even the energy that they had accumulated over many years of cultivation was sucked dry. What kind of monster was this? Remember to open your eyes in your next life. No, I'm willing to pay for my own cultivation. Don't kill me. The grace of a drop of water should be repaid with a gushing spring. I didn't say that I wouldn't kill you if you cut off your own cultivation. Bang. Are you stupid? Wan Yishui, who was stunned, frightened, and terrified, suddenly felt a pain in her forehead. She was awakened by Chen Hao's violent knock. You're the one who's stupid. Fatty, aren't you too cruel? You didn't even spit out the bones when you ate people? Wan Yishui, who came back to her senses, said without hesitation. She also didn't know what was going on with her. Fatty was obviously very scary, but now she wasn't afraid of him at all. Some people deserve to die. They happen to be. Don't forget how they wanted to deal with us before, especially you. If they were the ones who won, you really don't know how miserable you would be right now. Wan Yishui shuddered and didn't say anything else. If you delay, all your previous efforts will be wasted. Let's start again. Don't restrain me. The good show is yet to come. If I don't restrain you, what if something goes wrong? Even if nothing goes wrong, you can't help but moan. How embarrassing would that be? Nonsense. Oh, good. Begin. Cultivators had to endure loneliness. They were destined to accompany each other for 1,500 years. Chen Hao also thought it through. There was no need to deliberately avoid anything. Especially, sometimes, gratitude and grudges might have been destined from the beginning. Chapter 1311. Letting nature take its course should be the best way to deal with it. After a full 6 hours, under the guidance of Chen Hao, the marks on Wan Yishui's chest finally disintegrated little by little. The pain that tormented her for a year and fought with her over and over again finally disappeared, that comfortable feeling, as if the shackles that bound her soul had suddenly been broken, was simply indescribable. Perhaps because she was too excited, Wan Yishui suddenly threw herself into the fatty's arms and hugged him tightly, but because he was too fat, she could not hug him and excitedly screamed. Seduction. Fuck, this is definitely seduction. The fatty felt Wan Yishui's passionate embrace, as well as the charming and gentle feeling brought about by the compression of her chest, and was a little dazed. The feeling was naturally very good, but was there a need to be so excited? The fatty did not push away the excited Wan Yishui, but reservedly hung his hands on both sides of his body, as if he did not know where to put them. As an experienced person, especially a young and vigorous person, the fatty knew the horror of dry wood and fierce fire. This was not the time to test how strong one's willpower was. No matter how strong one's willpower was, even if one's state of mind was not disturbed, it would ultimately affect the underlying balance of yin and yang. Therefore, once it started, it could not end, it had to go all the way. Only by truly completing the final step would he be successful. Therefore, the fatty absolutely could not indulge himself to take the first step at this time, otherwise, the sea of bitterness would be boundless. The screaming Wan Yishui finally stopped and lowered her head. It could be said that she, who was lying in Chen Hao's arms, was slightly stunned when she saw Chen Hao's nowhere to put hands, and then the corners of her mouth hooked up into a smug smile. Is that enough? Thank you. You're welcome. Remember not to seduce me in the future. I'm not a good person. Maybe if I can't hold it in, I'll do you on the spot and not take responsibility. Don't think that I don't dare to hug you. I just don't want to start. Let's go. The fatty shrugged and then directly soared into the air. Wan Yishui's face was slightly red. She did not expect the fatty to be so direct and use such unpleasant words. Seduce? Who did he think he was? Damn that fatty. But due to the fatty's strength, Wan Yishui naturally did not dare to say anything and could only follow. The space-time laws here are probably thousands of times more than the outside world. Be mentally prepared for a long battle. It can't be? How did you know? Feeling. The two streaks of light, one in front and one behind, finally began to delve deeper. A path of seizing treasures that was filled with blood, cruelty, and where the strong were respected had finally officially begun. Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei were a pair of Daoist companions. Young master of saber and sword Ding Hao, who dared to provoke Xiao Mantian, and the two disciples of the new generation sword king Chen Taishu, Qin Yang and Miao Xian, could be said to be as many experts as the clouds. This was the first time that the god of slaughter Chen Hao had crossed swords with a true genius from the great world of Xian Di. What kind of performance would he have when he transformed into a wretched fatty? What kind of encounter would he have? Master! Master! Chi 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 chi. Streams of light drifted out from the gate of time and space, and beautiful figures of different styles slowly landed in the deepest part of the sanctum. This was the ancient chaos great thousand world. Master, who are they? Almost at the same time, the eyes of several beautiful young women flashed with a hint of surprise as they looked at the old man who was sitting cross-legged with a smile on his face and asked. Beside the old man, there was an extremely handsome young man. His hands were holding his head, his legs were crossed, and there was a beautiful flower in his mouth. There was an invisible trace of evil charm in his eyes as he sized up the young women who had just arrived. His naked eyes were very annoying, and the young women who had just arrived ignored him. They didn't even give him a second glance. And beside the young man, there was a young woman who was sexy and cute like a fairy. Her entire body emitted an invisible holy and ethereal aura. Her eyes also swept across the young women, and she muttered a name when she saw one. Sister Shui, Little Wu, Mainyang, Little Yen, Yu, Little Ting, Huan Huan, Lei, Ningbing, Little Yen, Sister Mei, Little Qing, Qin Shui, Helian Wuzi, Hu Mainyang, Tentai Lien, Xiaoyu, Long Ting, Ling Ninghuan, Ling Ningle, Bailey Ningbing, Chen Yen, Xiao Mei, and Chen Xiaoqing. Including me and Sister Qianxian, that's 14. Teacher Si Xian probably won't be able to escape from Brother Hao's evil clutches. 15 plus. Phew. Pairs are so big. Little nurse Lu Hui, the reincarnated immortal emperor of all things, was the only one who hadn't stepped into the cycle of reincarnation. Just by looking at their current appearances, she could naturally recognize who was who. Although the experiences of this cycle of reincarnation were different, and their temperaments were slightly different from the original bodies, it was easy to change mountains and rivers, but a person's nature couldn't be changed. Relatively speaking, this change was completely negligible. What a scoundrel! What kind of luck is this? Big Brother is so handsome, elegant, and talented. How come I don't have luck with women? They're all clearly the women I deeply love, so why are they so cruel to me? But another youth was naturally the seventh anima that had completely linked up with his memories. At this moment, he looked frivolous, but in his heart, he was thinking about the original body. There was no need to doubt his jealousy and hatred. One after another, fresh cabbage was placed in front of him. Moreover, they were all his, yet they ignored him. How could he feel good? Master, why didn't I hear you mention these disciples? Chen Yen went to Yilan's side like a little bird and said, It feels so familiar as if I've seen them somewhere before, huh? Long Ting let out a charming laugh. Little sister, you also have this feeling? Big sister also has this feeling. It's so familiar, so familiar. I feel that all of you are very familiar. At this moment, Qin Shui, who was still wearing a blue dress, suddenly asked, Master, I'm a reincarnated body. Or should I say, all of us are reincarnated bodies, right? The name that sister just said is the name of our original body, right? Master, Hu Meinyang said. Immortal light lingered around her. Her innate Tao embryo didn't seem to have changed in the slightest. Reincarnation? Helian Wuzi, who was as cold as the moon, muttered to herself. Her bright and clean forehead faintly wrinkled. An absent-minded, hazy image suddenly appeared in her mind along with the fluctuations of her mind. Reincarnation, moreover, it's reincarnation within reincarnation. How? Qin Shui, Hu Meinyang, Long Ting, Tantai Lian, Xia Yu, Ling Ning Huan, Ling Ning Lu, Chen Yan, Xiao Mei, Qin Xiaoqing, Lu Hui. Helian Wuzi's gaze swept over the girls and reported their real names. Senior Yi Lan. House 7th Anima, ha. Yi Lan, who had been smiling and not speaking, finally laughed out loud. Chapter 13:12. Little Wu, you've experienced the awakening of the endless cycle of reincarnation, so you're the easiest to break through the old man's seal. Alright, you've all sensed it. In fact, after you've broken through to the Daoist Jingxian realm, it won't be long before you awaken all your memories and fuse with your original bodies. The old man wanted to wait for you, but there's no need for that now. There's not much loss for you to fuse with your original bodies. Moreover, you didn't cultivate bitterly in this reincarnation. You've all been arranged with the best conditions and environments. Senior Yi Lan. Master, you're Yi Lan? Chen Yan exclaimed in surprise. You're Chen Yan, the controller, the killing god Chen Hao's sister, cough cough, cultivation partner. Huh? I'm Long Ting? I'm so powerful? Pa. Long Ting immediately laughed complacently, laughing so hard that her body trembled. The other women, who had not felt much, began to connect the dots one by one. Their hearts were filled with an inexplicable feeling, but there was no doubt that they were all excited. Who was Yi Lan? Who was the controller, the killing god Chen Hao? Including their own names in their hearts, they were all high and mighty existences that were worshipped, envied, and revered by all the cultivators in the ancient chaos-boundless world. All right, I'll undo the seal for you now and fuse with your original bodies. Beams of dazzling immortal light appeared between Yi Lan's fingers and entered the women's foreheads. Buzz. Boom. Rumble. In an instant, the seals of the women's reincarnation were completely undone. A terrifying roar sounded in their minds, and the sealed original bodies began to fuse with their current selves. Not long after the women began to fuse with their original bodies, the doors of time and space opened again. Sister-in-law? Senior Yi Lan. Why are the sisters-in-law? Why are they all here? Are they awakening? Figures descended one after another. They were like a coiling dragon, and the aura around them was countless times more terrifying. They were already at the peak of the late-stage Grand Mist Supremacy realm. Li Yang and Qin Ling's spiritual altars were even more dazzling, and their immortal spiritual qi was even more oppressive. The two of them breathed in and out as if they had already become one. Du Jing, Lan Feng, Ito Tai, Fan Dongxing, and Pan Dong Lu had also become many times stronger. They had all stepped into the peak of the late stage of the Grand Mist Supremacy realm. However, the one with the strongest aura among them was Chen Hao, who had 30% of Chen Hao's charm, but was slightly different from Chen Hao. Chen Nan was not tall, but just by standing there, he gave off an unshakable feeling. His whole body unconsciously released an awe-inspiring qi that seemed to connect the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Vast, boundless, and awe-inspiring. Sister-in-law Little Yen. Chen Nan smiled and called out softly. Her eyes were sparkling and translucent. Men didn't cry easily, but now, Chen Nan, who had grown to become the most powerful existence among Coiling Dragon and the others, had tears in his eyes. In the end, Chen Nan's gaze landed on Yilan. Senior, do you have news of my brother? Will I be able to see my brother? No one knew how much Chen Nan missed his older brother. Since he was young, Chen Hao had been his idol, and he had always been the person he imitated and chased after. But now, to him, his innocent childhood was perhaps the happiest time of his life, because at that time, he could often be with his older brother. Ever since he stepped into the cultivation world, he had always been chasing after his brother's footsteps. Even in his dreams, he wanted to fight side by side with his brother. No one knew the position of this brotherhood in his heart. Yilan was afraid that little Yen and his sisters-in-law would be affected by their feelings and let them reincarnate, but Chen Nan wasn't. Therefore, Chen Nan could only suppress his feelings and cultivate crazily. He didn't ask for much. He only hoped to catch up to his brother one day and become his right-hand man. Now, he had surpassed Coiling Dragon, Du Jing, and the others by a large margin. Bus. Why didn't I think of it? Senior Yilan must have summoned all of us here because only news of boss would do this, right? Hearing Chen Nan's words, Du Jing, Coiling Dragon, and the others immediately came back to their senses. That's right. Little Nan, your progress is astonishing. Yilan's eyes flashed as he stared at Chen Nan for a moment, then said, I had some luck. Senior, you flatter me. How is my brother now? How did you get news of him? Your brother is right here. Can't you ask me? Seventh Life, who had been sitting with his legs crossed, finally stood up and said to Chen Nan, Seventh brother, don't interrupt. Chen Nan didn't push him aside, but he called him seventh brother instead of brother. Moreover, he clearly didn't want to talk too much with him. In his heart, as well as everyone else's, there was only one Chen Hao. Damn, I know, okay? Not only do I have news of my detestable true body, you might even be able to see his image in a moment. Seventh Life said. As he spoke, he suddenly looked at Yilan and said, Master, you've seen it for yourself. I'm just a puppet that isn't welcomed. Even though I'm extremely talented and several times more awesome than my true body, I'm still a puppet. Little Seven, it's your own position that's not right, okay? Nurse Lu Hui said, Master, I hope you won't stop me. You should know my personality. Once I've decided on something, no one can change it. If you force me into a corner, I'll directly die for you to see. Just like this, there's no need to look for me. When I return again, I'll also bring with me supreme glory, glory that's even more powerful than this sovereign's. When I fuse with my true body, I'll show you. Buzz. However, Daoist Golden Wonderland's seventh life suddenly trembled and disappeared before everyone's eyes. Yilan smiled and shook his head, but didn't stop him. There were some things that couldn't be forced. Not to mention Chen Hao's 9 lives' profound art, even Si Xian's third life showed a strong sense of competition with his true body. Not to mention the seventh life, which seemed to be, or perhaps really was, more talented than Chen Hao's true body. How abnormal. It's just the Daoist Golden Wonderland, but he's already cultivated the greater teleportation art to the extreme. Among us, only little Nan can compare. As expected of boss's seventh life. How many years has it been? Coiling Dragon and the others were aghast. Alright, don't worry about him. This is for you guys. Try it on. Senior, is what he said true? Is he going to use this? Chen Nan asked after seeing the helmets that Yilan took out. They were very similar to the helmets of the second world, but had a very different aura. P.S. I still owe everyone 18 chapters. Today, I'll update 10 chapters. 1 chapter is the minimum, 9 chapters are supplementary. I'll return 9 chapters first. The next 9 chapters will be updated every hour. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.